Okay. I'd like to call the meeting to order. This work session, regular meeting of the Township Council is called to order. In accordance with Section 5 of the Open Public Meeting Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, be advised that adequate notice of this work session, regular meeting of the Township Council of the Township of Franklin, County of Somerset, was made by the posting on the bulletin board at the municipal complex and transmitted to the officially designated newspapers, a list of dates annually indicating that this work session, regular meeting would take place at the Franklin Township Municipal Complex at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, August 12, 2014. In addition, a copy of this notice is and has been available to the public, and it's on file in the office of the municipal clerk. Would everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the invocation given by Councilman Prasad.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
O God, the Creator and Redeemer of all the faithful, hear our supplications, and through thy infinite love and mercy, graciously grant us the strength and power in our thoughts and decisions to be for the benefit of all people at all times. Amen.
Okay, the roll call, Councilman Chase,
Here.
Councilwoman Francois, Councilman Kramer,
Here.
Mayor Levine, Councilman Prasad,
Here.
Deputy Mayor Regan, Councilwoman Sherman,
Here.
Councilman Vasanella,
Here.
Councilman Wright. Okay, now I need a motion for selecting the chair for the meeting this evening.
I would like to place a nomination, Phil Kramer, to run the meeting for this evening.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you very much. So much for my acceptance speech. I think we have no accommodations or proclamations today. There's no mayor or deputy mayor, so we can roll through that. And if you notice me pushing this meeting along quickly, council has, I believe, 13 first readings. A normal meeting has 4 at the most. So we have a monster meeting in front of us, plus the public discussion from our sound advisor. So we will try to do this expeditiously. The next item on the agenda is public discussion. Do I have a motion to open public discussion?
So moved.
Second.
It.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is passed. Hang on one moment. So before we actually open the public discussion, the manager had a good suggestion. I sense that most of you are here to hear what the sound expert has to say. I anticipate no vote on that. However, his suggestion was that we have the public discussion after we hear that, so people can ask questions or make comments about what Mr. Swirling said. So do I have a motion to amend the agenda?
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? So the agenda has been amended. I guess we have not opened the public session. The agenda has been amended so that we can move on to the council discussion item from Mr. Eric Zwirling of Rutgers University. Mr. Swirling is a noise expert, and I guess he's the man in the state to discuss the science of sound and noise. We've asked him to come to speak to us. This is mainly in reference to our sound ordinance and specifically to Middlebush Park. So, Mr. Swirling, when you are ready, you can take it away.
This all your stuff? You all spread out here? Is that your decimals at work?
My desk is nowhere near this thing.
Okay.
Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to assist in the deliberations here in Franklin Township, which served my family very well. As a matter of fact, the property that we're discussing right now, Middle Bush Park, page down. Why is this not giving me page down? Now that I have screen capture, it's not responding to commands. Technology, you know, you love it, but it's embarrassing when it doesn't work. This seems to have frozen.
Try escaping out of there.
I did.
Back it. Well, Control Alt Delete. All else fails.
But, and task.
He's not actually acting as judge, so he's doing world jobs, right? So we need to come up with a new judge, but then we also need to come up with prosecutors. We also, but then I haven't asked him what we think. I really could bring this up. We certainly would back there.
So does it.
Because there's been a change in what's going on. If I can get the office expeditiously and move that process.
I apologize for this.
I mean, I would do it, but I think you should let my narrative through.
Hopefully this will cooperate now. There we go. Okay, this property here, Middle Bush Park, which unfortunately it's a lot darker than I'd like it to be. Many years ago, my daughter, when this was a stable, rode a horse named Strawberry, so I do remember the location. As you'll see, the football fields that are in question are at the bottom of the screen, and there are houses to the northeast and also virtually due west. We should keep in mind that one should use his own property in such a manner as to not injure that of another. Quiet is unmolested, tranquil, free from interference or disturbance. What's the difference between sound and noise? Sound occurs when vibrating body causes motion in a medium such as the air or water. Noise occurs when this sound is unwanted. Legally, noise is often defined as sound which exceeds a standard set in a code. So the old question of if a tree falls in a forest, does it make any sound? Yes, it certainly does, because it causes vibrations which are within the spectrum that can be heard by a human. Whether it makes noise or not is a function of the perspective of the listener. There's a TV show called Axemen. For them, the sound of a tree falling is them feeding their kids. For somebody who is concerned about old-growth habitat for endangered species, for them it would most certainly be noise. So it's a function of perspective. Some noise impacts at the levels that we might expect here are noise can rise to the level of a nuisance. It can interfere with conversation and social interaction and or deprive people of the peaceful enjoyment of their private property. What are two of the properties we're going to discuss a little bit about noise is the decibel. The decibel is a unit of reporting. It is a logarithmic scale. So if you have, let's say, one alarm clock going off at 70, two alarm clocks going off together would not be a 140, which it would be if it was a linear or arithmetic scale. Two alarm clocks going off is 73. Every time you double the number of identical sound sources, it increases the sound level by 3 decibels. So one would be 70, two would be 73. Then to double that, you'd have to go to 4. 4 would be 76. To double that again, you'd have to go to 8. 8 would be 79. And then 10 alarm clocks would be 80 decibels. Humans, though, perceive a 10 decibel increase as roughly a doubling of loudness. So if you went from 70 to 80 decibels, even though that would represent a tenfold increase in the energy, there's 10 times as many sources. There are now 10 alarm clocks as opposed to 1. Humans would perceive a 10 decibel increase as a doubling of loudness. So if you were to, for instance, look at something that was 50 decibels and it rose to 60 decibels, on the face of it, if it was an arithmetic scale, it would look like it was just a 20% increase. But no, in fact, it is a doubling of the loudness and a tenfold increase in the actual energy. 0 decibels is the threshold of human hearing. I'm going to try to expedite this because I didn't realize you had 13 first reads, so I will skip through stuff here that may be interesting to gearheads but are relevant to this. What are some of the representative sound levels that we might encounter? 30 to 35 decibels is a quiet bedroom. 28 to 30 decibels. 50 decibels is the, and I measured sound levels, ambient sound levels out in the Middle Bush Park area. Daytime ambience, when there was little activity, were approximately 38 to 40 decibels, so it is a quiet environment during the day. There was little to no activity on the play fields, and there was nobody, for instance, mowing in the residential properties or idling trucks or anything like that. That's pretty much the dead quiet level there. 35 decibels inside somebody's house is the level which the EPA has said starts to awaken people, and that's why, and a house with the windows partially closed will attenuate approximately 15 decibels. By the time that the sound goes from outside the house through the shingles, the sheetrock, into the house, there's about a 15 decibel loss. So the New Jersey has set the permissible sound level limit at night in New Jersey at 50 decibels. 50 decibels outside the house is meant to yield 35 decibels inside the house, and that would be protective of sleep. Let me move down a little bit to, well, I'll get on to the regulatory standards in New Jersey. 65 decibels, actually, let me address it. 65 decibels is the daytime standard in New Jersey, which is also the standard here in Franklin Township, which has adopted the model ordinance, which is promulgated by the New Jersey DEP. 65 decibels is the level that is protective of speech at a distance of 1 meter. I'll get back to that. Properties of sound frequency, I'll just very quickly go over this. The unit of measure here is hertz. The range of human hearing is approximately 20 to 20,000 hertz. As we age, we do not hear up at the 20,000 hertz range. This is, colloquially could be responded to as bass or treble. That's something that you might identify with. It has, the major importance for our purposes here is that if a sound is of the same frequency and it's louder, one sound can mask another. If a sound is different than another in frequency, it will not mask the other. So, for instance, a high-pitched squeal in an otherwise fairly noisy environment, you would still be able to hear it because there's nothing in that sound that will, in the ambient, that will mask it. If, on the other hand, you have the sound of human voice in amongst a crowd, it would be masked by the other human voices because they're at the same frequency, which would be masking. Weighting scales, I'll just discuss this very quickly. The measurements in the New Jersey noise regulatory scheme, for the most part, are based upon the A weighting scale. And the A weighting scale is, if you'll see this on the right-hand side, and I should have brought a laser pointer, but I don't have one. On the right-hand figure, you see the A scale it drops down to the left. It is mimicking the sensitivities of the human ear to the left. So the A scale is used. So when you see somebody say dBA, it addresses, in essence, the human sensitivity to sound. Franklin Township's noise code. The permissible limit daytime, as you'll see on the bottom left hand, at the very bottom row, from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. is 65 decibels. At night, and that's 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., 10 p.m. to 7 a.m., it's 50 decibels. So the 65 decibel permissible sound level limit, and as I stated, the ambient level there is 38 to 40. The permissible sound level limit is 25 decibels above what the current ambient sound level is. To get back to what does 65 decibels mean, these are the steady A-weighted sound levels that allow communication with 95% sentence intelligibility. The sound level, New Jersey chose 65 decibels because it would basically allow conversation at a distance of 1 meter. Here it's 66 decibels, but the state many years ago rounded it down to 65. 66 decibels would protect speech at a distance of 1 meter. So if you were standing to somebody at the end of your arm, 65 decibels, if the sound around you got above 65 decibels, you would be right at the edge of a comfortable conversation. If it got above 65 decibels, you would start having difficulty having a conversation. But do note that somebody trying to sit, let's say, across a fire pit in their backyard or a picnic table, if they were sitting 10 feet apart from each other or 3 meters, the level that would be protective of that would be 56 decibels. If you see the table up there in a normal voice, communication distance of 3 meters is 56 decibels. So if the sound from something is 65 decibels on your property, then that would mean that you would have difficulty having a conversation at a distance of 10 feet on your own property. Okay, so the point then, so let me just take a stop here. With the sound system, there are essentially three choices, two primary choices that the township has: to either disallow it or to allow it. Obviously, those are the binary choices. If it is to allow it, then there are two choices that the council would have to make. One is to allow a sound system that would broadcast across the entire field. One would be a much smaller, confined sound system that would be audible primarily to the people in the speakers, and in the bleachers. Excuse me. And let me discuss a little bit about how one would make that decision. First, it's important for you to understand how sound propagates from a point source. When you have a point source, a speaker, an airplane, whatever it is, for every doubling of distance, the sound level drops by 6 decibels. So if you start out at, let's say you have 80 decibels at 10 feet from a source, every time that you double the distance, it drops by 6 decibels. So when you go from 10 feet to 20 feet, that's one doubling, to 40 feet, that's another doubling, to 80 feet, that's another doubling, to 160, that's another doubling, to 320 feet, that's another doubling. So there's 5 doublings to get to 320 feet, and 5 doublings would reduce that level by 30 decibels. So if you had, let's just say, a speaker where your goal was 80 decibels, but that was only 10 feet away, that it was very close to the receptors, and your goal was 80 decibels, which would guarantee that it could be heard for the people who are within 10 feet. By the time that you get out 320 feet, it's going to drop by 30 decibels, and it's going to be 50 decibels. And if you get out another 640 feet, it would drop another 6 decibels. If, on the other hand, you put a very large speaker, and that speaker is, let's say, 100 feet from the intended covered, the people in the bleachers, then and your goal is 80 decibels. It's the same level that you're looking for. It's 80 decibels in both cases. 80 decibels at that person's ear. That sound has already traveled 100 feet to get to that person's ear and be 80 decibels. The next doubling of distance is 200 feet. Then the next doubling of distance is 400 feet. So by the time that you reach almost the same distance, instead of it dropping by 30 decibels, it drops only by 12 decibels. So a lot of people don't understand how 80 decibels at the same location can be different, but it can be. If the source is 10 feet away from you, 80 decibels is very, very, very different than if the source starts out 100 feet away from you. So that, just to lay a few things down for you. Now, if you look at the bleachers pointed, if one were to, these are just my opinions. I'm just some guy at a small shared office at Rutgers University. I have no authority over anybody, and sometimes my Labradors don't even pay attention to me. If you were to put the speakers, small speakers, at the bottom of the stands and point them up, the distance to the houses to the northeast is 650 feet, and the distance to the houses to the west is 525 feet. However, if you were to put the speakers at the top of the bleachers pointed down, small speakers at the top of the bleachers pointed down, it's now approximately 800 feet to the east and 800 feet to the northwest, to the northeast. So it's a greater distance, and in addition, the speakers pointed straight down. And if you put some sort of an overhang, if you created a housing with an overhang over the speakers, the sound would have to, would hit the grass surface, and there would not only be the distance attenuation, which I discussed, the doubling of distance, 6 decibels, not only would that play into it, but also there's significant ground attenuation that would also be involved. So that is, something to consider. I don't see, one of the possibilities that the council may consider is you can enter into a contract with somebody and say that the permissible sound level limit at the property lines is 40 decibels. That's what's allowable. And they can test it. They can calibrate the system. We recently did something similar to this for Montclair State University. They had very loud speakers that were high up. The neighbors were very distressed about it, very. They put in, they had a company, and I can supply the name of the company, that put in a compressor limiter, which is, it does not allow the sound system to get above a certain level, and all communication, all electronic communications went through that limiter. It didn't matter whether it was the referee on the field, it didn't matter whether it was the cheerleader, it didn't matter what it was. Everything went through that sound system. We then, there were 2 of us, I was out at the residential property line with the sound level meter. I had my colleague, the vice president of my firm, was in the booth, and we finally, I said, okay, it's too high, lower it, lower it, lower it. They finally got to a point, set it down, and then it was password protected, and nobody could drop it from there. I could raise it from there, excuse me. So that is a possibility. I would recommend, and again, this is just some guy's recommendation, that if you put a sound system in here, I would recommend that you protect the people to the current level of the ambient, which is 40 decibels, that you set the level permissible limit at 40 decibels, and don't micromanage how the company achieves that. But I think that at 40 decibels, this would protect people not only outside, but it would certainly protect them inside. Because if it's 40 decibels inside, and the house has an attenuation with the windows open of 15 decibels, it would be 25 interior to the house. You wouldn't hear it. If you closed your windows, 25 decibels, 20 to 25 is what you'll get for a house with the windows closed. Then you would end up having 15 decibels. You just would not hear this. The reason why I brought up the masking as well is that obviously if there's people on the field, there's going to be a lot of communication in the range of human voices. There's going to be vocal effort. This will also be vocal effort. It will be masked by the crowd noise. Also, putting the speakers where I suggest here, not only will it be much greater distance additional distance to the receptors. Also, there will then be some coverage for the field itself. If the speakers are at the bottom of the stands, facing up into the stands, then there is no coverage for the field. People on the field can't hear it at all. If you do it the other way around, then there's cross coverage to the field. Let me just go down and make one more point about vegetation. Vegetation does very little to stop noise. It has to be essentially 100 feet of machete-thick jungle to do much of anything. This is the excerpt here is from an ISO standard. It shows that you can calculate what the attenuation is, but even if you have through 250 feet at the lower frequencies, it only reduces it by 3 decibels. There's a psychological advantage. You don't see it. I certainly understand that. But as a matter of fact, there was a study that was done where they put up some trees next to a highway. It did nothing to reduce the sound levels of the highway, and the people, in fact, were even more annoyed because it was just as loud as it ever was, and they thought that they wouldn't be able to hear it, but they still could hear it, and they were even more annoyed than they were without the trees. Then lastly, about barriers. For any sort of a barrier to work, a wall on the highway or something like that, for a barrier to work, it has to be close to both the source and the receptor. If you put a barrier close to the, or somewhere in the middle, it's just not as effective. And if a barrier is more than several hundred feet away from either the source or the receptor, the sound will just bend over the top. And that's, I know that there's going to be a lot of questions. Ultimately, what the board, based upon the will of the jurisdiction, will have to decide is there no sound system allowed? Is a sound system one centralized sound system, or is there going to be some smaller sound system with specific permissible limits established? Thank you. Are there any
Great,
questions?
well, so if you could turn on the lights, sir. Thank you. So, counsel, do you have any questions?
Quick question from
Mr. Vesson?
Eric. We're very concerned, and I imagine a lot of the people here tonight are from the houses. And obviously, that's been probably our biggest major focus and concern with this issue. But I'm also curious as to, you were looking at those measurements, the sound level, what it would feel like, what it would sound like, how it would intrude or not intrude upon the people in the park. This is a multi-faceted park, and the proposal, or at least one of the main proposal that this stemmed from, was for, I believe, or at least the desire was for broadcasting of games, or announcing games throughout almost the entire day on a Sunday, if I remember right. To me, that'd be one of the biggest uses of the park for everybody and anybody. How would it affect people that are there in relation to what you were saying, at the property lines and in their homes, and not to dismiss the concerns of anybody in the audience, but how would that affect, how would those people be affected?
I think that if the sound system were placed, as I had suggested, is a possibility, where it was at the top of the bleachers pointing down. The primary impact will most certainly be on the playing field itself. That by the time that you get to the other side of the playing field, it's already had the opportunity to attenuate by approximately 100 feet.
Wait, but I'm not talking about people involved with the games. I mean, like kids playing, like did you went out there and inspect it all out?
No, I understand. So
Okay.
let me just, for instance,
Or hikers? I can't tell from this angle. It's a little strange for me, so I don't know where all these other activities
if
mesh.
the sound is going primarily from these speakers would be going this way, from these speakers would be going this way, that if you have this set so that your goal is 75 or 80 at the front of the bleachers, it only has to travel 10 feet. So by the time that it travels 20 feet, that's one doubling, 40 feet, that's another doubling, 80 feet, that's another doubling. So by the time it reaches the other side of the stadium, it's going to drop by 18 decibels, from 75 down to, 58, 57, something to that effect. And at that point, that would not be disruptive. I mean, people are not, they're not, for instance, like in Grand Teton National Park, where they're listening to Wind in the Willows. There's going to be people, there's going to be vocal effort. They will hear voices. Average human it will be at the level where it is akin to standing next to somebody having a conversation at a distance of about 3 or 4 feet. It won't be loud. It would not be loud, in my estimation and opinion.
Any other council members? Mr. Chase?
Now, how directional are the speakers? In other words, you aim them down onto the bleachers. Is it less sound going the other way? How much less?
Well, let me state that my sound reinforcement speakers, sound in stadiums, that's not my area of expertise. I do know that these speakers do exist. Do I know exactly what the radius of their throw is? I don't. One would have to, if one desired to go this way, one could set very specific conditions as to what the permissible limits would be. And whether, if the speaker wouldn't allow for that, then you might have housings that surround the unit that would then extend out and collimate the sound. So for instance, if you have it pointed down from the top, I would certainly put some I would put it in a housing, if it doesn't already come, so that there's not much scatter up. Because when you have it pointed down, you don't want it to be doing this, going horizontally. You want it to go down onto the field and spend its energy on the turf. That you would want some overhang on whatever the housing is to make sure that it collimates the sound downward. But that area of expertise, I mean, I would contact some of the suppliers.
Anyone else from council?
Yeah, I have a
Sherman.
question. I see you're only addressing speakers in that one field, the one that's further from the houses. Has that always been the plan, always to have it in one field? Okay. So any play in the other field closer to the houses would not use speakers?
The information that was supplied to me was that the desire was to have it on the field to the right, which would be considered the primary field, the one with bleachers on both sides of the field and not the ones with the berm seating. That would be a secondary field, but that the primary field would be the one on the right-hand side, correct?
So the sound now reaching the bleachers on the other side was 54 decibels, did you say? Sound of conversation 3 feet away?
Yeah, doing a back-of-the-envelope calculation, yes.
All right. Is that enough with the other sound going on around them for people to hear that clearly?
Well, you're not relying on the amplification, for instance. So each bleacher would have its own. So you'd have speakers on the top of the westerly bleacher
side has
coming down, and you'd have some on the easterly bleacher coming down to cover these. You're not
Right.
relying on this to throw away. This is very much a limited throw system that we're discussing here. You do not want a sound system that can, at 100 feet, provide the amplification you're looking for. You do not want that here.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Francois was next.
So I think what I'm hearing you say is if we had a speaker system that pointed down at that 800-foot level distance and keep it at 40 decibels, somehow the sound would not travel and have an impact on the residents. Is that kind of,
Well, what
did
I'm
I
saying-
summarize what I heard you say? Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yes, I think that if we were to set a permissible limit of 40 decibels at the property lines of any of those houses, that they could put the speakers close enough to the people that they would have adequate communication at that distance, and that it would still protect the people's ability to outside on their own property. Would they hear it at times? It may be slightly audible at times, but if there's other activity in the park and there's kids on the swing screaming and there's, the football people cheering, they may hear the noise from the actual stands themselves. The people cheering may actually at that point be louder than the amplification.
So in layman's terms, how many decibels is your average radio? What does that come up to in general?
It would depend. What I can say best is that 40 decibels is the sound level of Middle Bush Park when there's nothing much at all going on. It's quiet. A quiet suburban environment. There were a couple of kids playing on the playground there, off in the distance. There was some rustling of trees and the leaves in the trees. Some traffic off in the distance on DeMott. I might have been picking up a little bit of 287 off in the distance. I'm not sure, but that's quiet. A radio. It depends. Is it me listening or my son listening?
Right. Councilwoman, I was out with Mr. Zwirling in the park when he took some of these readings central to the park, near the bleachers. He went out later and took other ones at other locations. There was a mother with 2 small children in the park at the playground who really, they were not audible to me. I'm sure that they were creating some sound. They weren't audible to me. And there was a gentleman who was out on the far left of actually at the very bottom of that picture, and the field on the right, left, I'm sorry, and the field on the left, who was just working out. He was, and those were the only people in the park. There were no maintenance workers, there was no one cutting the grass or edging or weed whacking off in the distance. There was really no other noise. It was just a sunny, clear day, and 40 dB was the reading that we were getting near the bleachers of the field, near the parking lot.
Okay.
So that's kind of the, and you had just walked in just after that was said. That was the ambient level of sound in the park. And we talked a little bit about masking of sound. You know, that's what it is when there's nothing. So if that's the level at the property line, that's what it is. If, you know, I would say if we went out there right now, other than the pitter patter of the rain, that would be about what the level would be now as well.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Prasad.
A couple of things. One, what happens when it hits the ground if it's pointed downwards? Does it, the sound, does it bounce, and does it become less because of hitting resistance?
Well, very much so. It depends, obviously, it depends on the reflectivity of the surface. If this was a lake or smooth cement, it would reflect off it. But when it's a soft ground like this is, it is significantly absorbed. You know, a lot of the energy, acoustic energy, is spent, it's lost as heat, infinitesimal as it is, lost as heat.
Okay. Now, just putting aside speakers and everything else, you're a sound expert. You probably know about the sound systems that are out there. And is it possible to find a 21st century solution to this from a high-tech perspective? Maybe think of, something going out over the internet and people being able to tune into it with their own private, listening, earbuds or whatever. And it could be moms who are out there, dropped off the kids, and they're still out shopping or something, but still can listen to the game without having all the decibels. If I'm talking into a muffled microphone and everybody picks it up on their earbuds, is that something that would actually be something that's possible today?
Honestly, I have not reviewed the available products, but I can't imagine that that's not possible. I would be inconceivable to me that could not, that isn't either off the shelf or easily achieved.
There's apps all over.
I would have to.
Yeah, there's apps of varied sorts. Some council has been looking into that.
I'm sure.
So then we owe it to ourselves to do the research and make sure that this, we leave no stone unturned as to explore all the options before we go out and decide on what needs to be done. But that would be the most least obtrusive or intrusive solution as such.
With certainty, I mean, not releasing sound energy at all would be the most conservative approach.
Right.
Setting a permissible limit of 40 at the property lines, I think, would be very, very protective. Allowing speakers on top of poles would be non-protective.
Okay.
You don't want,
Just to follow up to that.
large speakers
Yeah,
covering
sure.
a whole area. That
Yeah.
I would recommend against that specifically.
Right, okay. But, there are other parks also, and we've had people complain about those parks as well, where the loud noise has bothered them, and they have told us that we need to do something about our sound ordinance, and we want to be on the cutting edge, leading to the least amount of sound in the township, and as such, having a sound ordinance that would be the most, acceptable to everybody and preserve the quality of life. So from that perspective, if we had somebody in a booth who's a commentator or whatever, with fully enclosed sound barriers, and then they're speaking into a microphone that's going out over the internet and not over the airwaves and in the field itself.
That certainly would be, by far the most protective of all.
Okay.
Okay, so
So,
those are options then.
so I have some
Okay.
comments and questions. One question that will come up is the effect of wind on sound, the way sound carries.
Contrary to wind in this circumstance would not make a tremendous difference. It can reduce the sound levels. It doesn't dramatically enhance it. It doesn't cause it, because the attenuation with distance is simply a function.
Speak into the mic.
Okay.
Because the sound's dropping off the farther you have the mic from you. Sorry.
Thank you for making my point so clearly. Sound, as sound travels, it diminishes based on the inverse square law. As it travels distances, it reduces just simply by the additional distance. Now, wind blowing towards us, from the receptor to the source, can cause the sound to bend upward. And so that the receptor, who may be at ground level, the sound now is pushed somewhat upward, and the person upwind of it would experience less sound. But even if the sound is pushing it towards somebody, what happens is it doesn't actually increase the level, it just doesn't decrease the level. So there are certain circumstances of humidity and temperature inversion where there can be some reflection and additional enhancement in that manner, but it is, I don't think it's going to
Basically sounds like it's little effect, because
Yeah.
some people are concerned about that.
Yeah.
Okay. The other comment, or a comment I have is you are, except for a couple of points, treating sound as a homogeneous thing, but as you well know, it depends on frequency, especially with sound attenuation. So that 15 dB attenuated in the house may be true of a higher frequency, but not true of the lower frequencies, which seem to go through everything. Am I right, or?
You're absolutely correct. I mean, if this system was used for anything other than human voice, and so if this is going to be reproducing music, for instance, particularly if it was going to have a heavy bass component to the music, then if one were to go with a speaker system at all, I would also suggest that there be an equalizer placed on the system as well. So there are two systems that can be put on a sound system, two devices that can control the sound. One is a compressor limiter, which prohibits it from going above a certain level. It approaches that level and levels out at that level, so it can never get above that. But then you also want to take out the very lowest frequencies, 63 hertz, 125 hertz, 250 hertz to some extent. And it's those low frequencies, the 63, the 125, the bass thumping, the chest thumping bass that can penetrate a structure. You would want to take that out as well. So you can either prohibit the use of music over the system, which I don't think would be reasonable if one was going to go ahead with that. But I would strongly suggest that there be an equalizer put on it to take out those lowest frequencies.
And then the housings around speakers also have difficulties with the low frequencies attenuating that, but I guess your equalizer would,
Take out those frequencies.
they wouldn't even reach the speaker.
They would be substantially reduced. I'd have to,
Sure.
it depends upon what type of music they're playing, obviously, as to whether it's rich in bass or not.
Okay. So it seems like there's two criteria for decibels. One is sleep, and the other one is speech, that Ms. Francois and I can carry on a conversation and not be interrupted. But there's no limit for annoyance. If I just am looking forward to that afternoon sitting and reading a book in my backyard, then certain amount of sound, while I could still carry on a conversation. So in other words, you're not speaking to the psychology of speech, you're talking to mechanics of speech. Psychology of noise, you're talking to mechanics of noise.
That's true. I mean, for certain, under certain circumstances, it's not just whether or not it interferes with speech or sleep, but it's also whether it's audible or not. And audibility is a function of both the intensity and the frequency of the source, but also the intensity and frequency of the ambient sound, which would be masking of it. My assumption, so,
So did you measure the spectrum of the 40 dB that you said? Was it white noise 40 dB, or you don't know, you just had a...
No, I mean, I've collected the data, but I have not analyzed it from that perspective. But what I assumed was that if there were people out in the park, as there would probably be on a football day, that there's going to be a lot of vocal emissions at that time. And the human speech is generally in the 500 to 2,000 hertz range. So there's going to be a lot of that out there anyway. And whether that frequency spectrum, 500 to 2,000 hertz, is coming through a speaker or whether it's coming from the crowds in the bleachers, regardless, on a football day, it is not going to be inaudible in the back. Even with no amplification whatsoever, I would imagine, I don't know, I haven't been there on a football day, I would be virtually certain that people in those houses hear the sound of crowds on a football day.
People in this room behind you have testified that they have, yes.
Sir, so it's not as if we're adding a new source. We're adding just more vocal emissions at a level that's probably ultimately that would be at or below the level of what's extant at that time. If you turn that sound system on at 40 decibels in the middle of the day, when there are no vocal emissions, yes, that frequency would be different than just what I measured, which was wind in the trees and 287 off in the distance and a little bit of Demont.
I mean, I guess my problem as a politician is if I put in this 40 dB system, I'm promising these people it won't disturb them, and I know, because I work with sounds, I know 40 dB in a sound booth is very distinguishable. It's very obvious that it's happening.
Yeah.
But there's nothing out there there's nothing masking it. The ambient noise of the sound booth is 20 dB. So I'm just concerned that I promise them, you won't hear it, and they will.
Well, one way to test this would be to actually recreate that circumstances, to have a speaker out there reproducing vocal effort. I mean, I've done that with talk radio. I figured that was about what would be happening. I went out to the property line when I was doing a McDonald's drive-through one time and put a boombox with a talk radio on a peach crate and stood back at the property line to take measurements. I figured, I mean, you can certainly do that.
Okay, so that's actually something I had suggested is we do balloon tests when we put up structures so people can see from a distance what it'll look like. We could do a sound test. So, all right, does council have any additional questions?
I think it's been answered, but I just want to make sure. So you're saying 40 dB during the day with nobody there was the sound at the property line?
Yes.
And it's going to be 40 dB with speakers and a crowd at a football game at the property line?
No, that's not what I said at all.
I'm sorry, then
No,
correct me.
What I'm saying is that the speaker, the crowd, I have no idea what the sound level of the crowd's going to be at the property line. The crowd may, at the property line, be 50, 55, could be 60 for all I know.
Okay.
In that case, if the crowds are actually 55 or 60 at the property line, and we've set the sound system to be 40, it will absolutely be inaudible. It will be masked by this, if that is the levels of the crowd, the significant level of the crowd. So I'm not, in that case, you will definitely not
Yeah,
get
I mean, you
the
can't stop the
loudspeaker.
crowd. That
that's
noise is going to be there. But can the crowd hear it at 40 dB if they're at 55?
Well, it would be 40 at the property line, but what I
Right.
tried to figure out was, could there be enough sound from speakers that would enable people in the bleachers to hear it and not be a problem out at the property line? And my calculations show that that's probably possible. That you could have 75 to 80 decibels in the bleachers if the speakers are really close to the bleachers, in fact, on the bleachers. And that would yield the goal of letting the people in the bleachers hear the sound and not having any impact, relatively speaking, to the people at the property line. That's, I was trying to see, could I come up with something that would make everybody happy? And the math shows that that's probably the case. Now, if they turn on that sound system in the middle of the day, when there's nobody in the park, that 40 decibels will probably, you'll be able to hear at a distance. Now, but remember, 65 decibels is the permissible limit daytime. 50 is the permissible limit nighttime. We're talking 40. This is below the permissible limit at nighttime in the state of New Jersey. So, I mean, it's a conservative number.
One last question. 40 dB is 40 dB, so 40 dB of someone screaming, but because of their distance or whatever, is the same as 40 dB of somebody talking calmly. It doesn't matter.
Well, on a for a sound level meter, yes. A sound level meter is content neutral. It doesn't judge if there's any information being conveyed. A scream for people, even if it's at 40 decibels, it conveys urgency. And so somebody, if they hear a scream or they hear a baby, you know, when my children were young, if I heard coughing in the room next door, respiratory distress, it wouldn't matter if it was 31 decibels. If I could hear it, respiratory distress had meaning to me, and I would immediately get up and listen to it. Whereas if it was just the boiler in the house kicking on and off, it wouldn't have made a difference. But as far as a sound level goes, it wouldn't make any difference.
Okay. Thank you. Ted.
So I get the impression you're suggesting that if we have a compressor limitation on the sound system, then even if the announcer says, "Go!" you will depress it, it will hold the broadcast sound down to the same level that it would have been when it was just normally describing action.
That's exactly the purpose of a compressor limiter. Exactly.
Okay, if there's no further questions from council, we can move on to public discussion. But what I want to do is see, if you could put the mic back. I'd like to see hands of people who want to ask our speaker questions. Okay, so if you'll kind of hold it to that, we can do that and allow him to answer in real time. Again, there's a lot of people here, and a 2-hour public session would be quite imposing on us since we have a long council meeting afterwards. You can speak all you want. Not all you want, but I'm not telling you not to speak. But, all right, so
5-minute limit.
Does
Well,
council want to
normally-
limit the length of each speaker to 3? Typically, it's 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Do we want to keep it at 5 for tonight?
I think it should be 3.
Well, let's try that and see
Okay.
if it.
Well, we can't change later on. All right, we'll go with 5 minutes.
The number of
So,
people-
do I have a motion to open to public discussion?
Thank you.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion is passed. So we're going to open to public discussion. You can speak on any matter related to government. Obviously, the soup du jour is the sound system, but if you are here for another reason, you can speak about that as well. Please state your name and address at the microphone, and you will hear a few beeps at 3 minutes and multiple beeps at 5 minutes, and I will hold your feet to the fire on the 5 minutes. Anyone who wishes to speak, just come on up. There we go.
He's loaded for bear.
I am not as good with names as Mayor Levine, so I will just ask people to come up. You can form a line if you'd like.
Hiya, my name's Jerry Meinster. I live on Haslett Way in the Carriage Homes, right almost around the corner. And this isn't so much addressed to the gentleman as it is to the council. As far as decibels are concerned, this was very interesting. I know my feelings on decibels on this subject, and it's 0. This is an absolutely needless situation. I don't know whose idea it was to put a loudspeaker system in. My son played 7-8 years of recreational soccer and Little League baseball. He didn't hear his name over the loudspeaker. He didn't hear music between innings or whatever your ideas are. But he grew up to be a pretty responsible human being without having to have a loudspeaker involved. So needless. There's no need for this. These kids can play without loudspeakers. Number 2, One of the gentlemen here before said quality of life. You're darn right it's quality of life. Some people work at night. They're going to have to sleep during the day and hear speakers on the weekend. Someone said about reading a book in the backyard. Who wants to hear loudspeakers and music and play-by-plays when they want to just relax? They have company coming over. They don't want to be disturbed by what's going on in a field of football where they have no interest and no desire to know what's going on. This is for kids we're talking about, and you're going to be affecting the lives of adults. And quality of life. And number 3, and most important, I live right here. It affects me. But what if any of you lived right here? You wouldn't like it, 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 you, and any of the other people who are in here. You wouldn't like it. There's no freaking need for this. There shouldn't even be a discussion. Thank you.
Judy Marino, Barclay Court. Sir, you measured the sound of this speaker system with thing. I don't know if you measured what do 500 people screaming sound like. That's my concern. Also, I live about 1.5 miles as the crow flies from the swim club on Cedar Grove. We hear that constantly when they have swim meets. The trees, you're right, do nothing. So we hear the sound speakers, we hear the cheering, and it's a lot further from my house than what you're proposing here. So I'm concerned about how many people do you expect in these stands that you have? And Dr. Zwirling has measured the sound of the announcements and the speakers and the music and things like that. But what about the people in the stands who are going to be cheering? Not to mention, like my friend who spoke just before me, the other public nuisance about traffic, cars, supervision, and who's going to monitor this? Can you promise that there's going to be a police officer or someone else in authority up there all the time? Who will monitor this? If it's 40 decibels or 70 decibels, who will monitor this? And that's a real concern, I think. And as parents, I think we should all be concerned, too, about the isolated nature of this area. So I'm concerned about what are you going to do with the people that are there. You can monitor the sound system itself, but not with the cheering and the other things. And I'm telling you that the swim club, if any of you are here who can hear the swim club when they do have their swim meets, you can hear that very well. Thank you.
My name is Susan London. I live at 140 Piccadilly Place. And I have 2 specific technical questions to ask, or other things to consider. One is, if you install one of these systems, is vandalism going to be concerned? You're going to be putting them down in the bleachers. If you propose to go with that and invest the township money in doing it, how are you going to keep them from being vandalized? And what I've heard in this talk, if you raise the speakers to an area where they're less likely to be vandalized, then I don't see how you're going to limit the sound to a level where it will be acceptable by the neighbors. And then as to the suggestion of a high-tech solution, I would recommend you perhaps discuss with Comcast about setting up a hotspot in the vicinity of the park and possibly putting in free Wi-Fi as a way to go and support creating a radio station that people will go, plus you'll have the additional capability in the park to now make it something where people can use that Wi-Fi, but there are additional issues of protecting the Wi-Fi network and security, so it's not that straightforward, but I do like the technical solution to it as opposed to the speakers. And if it's something Comcast will do, and they may get a benefit out of it and may not charge you for it because they get to put it in the area, it may be a cheaper solution to do, so do consider that.
I like the idea of Comcast paying for it. Do we have a seat for her on Financial Oversight Committee?
But I don't even think we need.
Tara Young, 299 Schilling Drive. The last time I was here was when you were first discussing the possibility of having this park. when we were promised that there would be no lights or sound, and here I stand before you, begging you to keep at least half of that promise and not have the sound. To me, to hear the difference in permissible limits of 50 decibels being allowed at night doesn't mean that it's not disturbing to the people that are listening to it. The difference to me between 40 decibels being drowned out by 60 decibels of crowd noise is the difference of me having 6 people over for Thanksgiving versus 24 people over for Christmas. It's loud. It's disturbing. It doesn't just affect the people on Charles Street and Gorgon Way. It affects us on Schilling, on Glastonbury, on Cotswold, everyone in Quailbrook, everyone in surrounding areas. You talk about the quality of life for the citizens of this town. Yes, it was a great idea to have a recreational facility, but there are other people being affected by it as well that would like to share in having a good quality of life too. And to be able to sit on my patio in the afternoon and just watch the birds or the deer that are left behind my house, I really enjoy that. I really enjoy listening to the owls at night and watching the red-tailed hawks flying over my house during the day. So it's not just about recreation. Sometimes just peace is the recreation that, I find the most joy with. So I'm begging you, please do not have the sound system put in. As the gentleman said earlier, his child was playing sports for many years and they got by without a sound system. It doesn't matter which way it's facing, you're still going to hear it. We hear the kids up there now. We hear the slapping of the skateboards. Before anything else was put in, we heard that. I thought there was construction going on. It was only the slapping of the skateboards. Do you really need to have this? Is it really that necessary? You have a beautiful, beautiful park. But I really am begging you to just nix the sound system altogether. Thank you for listening to me.
I too, am opposed to the sound system. I'm also concerned, you talked about low decibels and how you can, with an equalizer, block those out. But what would be our guarantee that it would stay that way, that somebody wouldn't say, oh, you know what, let's make this sound a little better, let's change the equalizer setting? What's our guarantee that in 2 years that won't happen? That's pretty much the concern.
That's a political question, not a, you can answer that if you want, but that doesn't sound like a technical question.
Well, just as with any resolution that a town may pass, there may be monitoring requirements. There's a facility that was put in Lawrence Township where in order to get the variance necessary for that particular facility, the facility had to agree to random monitoring every quarter to determine if they're still in compliance. So one could put a continual testing if wanted to go in that direction. Some requirement for testing on some basis paid for by the applicant.
I'm sorry, before you leave, you needed to give your name and address.
John Ferrone, 326 Schilling Drive.
Thank you. You need to be on top of this, sir.
Sorry. I'm just an apprentice.
Rich Ringer, 394 Glastonbury Lane. I owe everybody an apology. When this park was first discussed, I called somebody that was involved with it, one of the people I have it in my record someplace, if anybody wants me to find out. But I was deceived, because I was told, oh, it's a park, it's going to have some ball fields, and that's it, plain and simple. We were having some big financial problems at that time, and I asked the question, who's paying for it? Oh, well, that was donated to us. I didn't ask any questions, and I just accepted that. I was deceived. And I apologize, because I would have been here raising hell. And I'm not one who lets things go like that. So I didn't even realize that you folks had approved the park, or at that time, this young lady spoke about it, where she came and they said there was no lights or anything like that, and now we have them. Who's responsible for that? That's a political question. You folks, am I correct?
responsible for what? You've
The
had,
lights going up, the promise that there was no lights, and then there's lights.
That was not there was no sound. There was never
there
any
was,
sound.
so there was lights planned, wiring for lights in the initial conception of the park. I don't accept that we promised no lights.
Okay.
There was no discussion about sound.
Okay, yes.
I don't know that we promised no sound, but I will agree, there was no discussion about sound.
All right, that's background
Okay.
from me, and my apology because I would have been raising a little cane. Question, atmospheric effects. You made a comment about hearing the noise from 287. Not the sound, the noise. Well, both, okay. There. What about the atmospheric effects?
Well, you mean the transmission from this facility to the residences or from
Yeah.
287?
No, from the facility, the field, to the area, whether it's clear sky, overcast sky.
Well, first, if you have a temperature inversion, what will end up happening is that the sound will tend to, instead of bending up, it will bend down, and it can spread out. It can be
Exactly
heard
right.
at greater
That's correct,
distances.
yes.
You know, the point that I made previously was that if this sound system, and please don't misinterpret what I've said here. I've just laid out different options for the town. I said that they can
understand it.
that they can, choose to allow no amplification. They can choose to allow amplification on top big poles or small
But I
poles.
think this is a piece of information that they should
Yes.
know.
If the crowd, when the crowd is there, that will be by far if the sound system that I've said could work, conceivably work, the sound from the crowd will be of much greater intensity than the sound system itself. And while people may hear the crowd at great distance, as they do apparently from the swim club,
Right.
they would not be hearing the sound system at that distance as well. They would hear vocal effort. It would be cheering of crowds, and that may be audible for half a mile.
Basically, under certain atmospheric conditions, any audible noise could be bounced.
Yes, certainly.
Okay, that ends it.
Yes.
It could be bounced. I can't see your name. I got to get better eyes. If in fact these poor deprived people need a sound system, I think that your suggestion is excellent. We have technology that can do that at no cost to us and no cost to people in inconvenience. You want to listen? You take out your phone or your smartphone. I'm not smart enough to have a smartphone. And you listen, plain and simple. You don't bother anybody. And really, that's what it amounts to. Are you going to bother us? Or are they going to bother us? And I certainly object to it. As a closing comment, I might say that each one of you have a personal interest in this, above and beyond anything else. You're here because we vote for you. If it gets aggravating, if the noise becomes loud enough to any of us or all of us, then you won't be there. So you all have a personal interest. Thank you for listening. I appreciate it.
How are you? Tom Young, Schilling Drive. That was my wife that talked before. And Councilman Kramer, I got to disagree with you because I was at that same meeting when we first talked about Middlebush Park. And when all the concerns that were coming on about sound, light, and everything else, it was addressed. And it was saying, oh, no, we will never have that. And we can go back, we can look at the tape from that time if you'd like.
So you're saying that we did say no sound at that?
We said no sound, no lights. Don't worry about it.
I
Okay?
don't
And that's
recall that.
exactly what's said. And so now what's happened is we have other towns with these great parks and everything like that. They keep adding all these things onto it. We got to keep up with them. And that's why I feel like it's all keeping up with the Joneses. What South Brunswick just put in, we got to do something like that. What does Monroe have? What does that have? And it's not the way it should be. Okay? The other thing at the park, too, the last meeting at the Middlebush Park that got me really upset was after the meeting when only one councilwoman, Ms. Sherman, actually said something about, well, how about the seniors or the people that don't have families that are going to be playing soccer or anything? There was only one person that spoke up about that. And after that meeting, I watched the coaches come up and high-five a bunch of the councilmen. That got me really upset. All right. Question that I have is, you did a sound level when there's nobody there. Why didn't we do a sound level when there's a normal soccer game? Wouldn't that make more sense?
No, actually, I mean, my task was to determine what would be the most conservative approach to this. If I were to, for instance, go there when there was a soccer game going on, and let's say that I measured 55 at the property line at that point, then my conclusion would have been at that point that having a sound system that is limited to 55 would have had no impact. So, I mean, my goal here wasn't to determine what was the current impact of the operations of the facility as it is now, not to look at what the crowds are currently generating, but what would be the most conservative levels from the operation of a sound system that would have no impact beyond what is there now. So it's better, much more conservative for me to have taken sound level measurements when there was nothing going on than when there was a lot of activity going on.
Okay, but of course there is a lot of other noise that'll happen. And you keep on talking about the crowd noise going to mask the sound of speakers. I don't know, if one person's yelling, okay, and a second person comes and yells with that person, does he mask the first sound? I don't think so.
Well, you know, if they happen to be coincident in time, when you have a large crowd, there's going to be a lot of people talking, you know, not necessarily simultaneously, but in aggregate continuously. And so if they're talking, if that is a continuous sound source that's in the range of human vocal speech between 500 and 2,000 hertz, then if you had speakers that were of a human vocal effort in the same frequencies, it would essentially mask it. And I'm not saying that in aggregate they would not be inaudible at the property line. You would still very much hear the crowd noise, but you would not hear the sound system.
Okay, so if we can't hear the sound system and you're saying it'll be masked by the noise, what's the purpose of even having the sound system?
Because I'm talking about receptors that are 800 feet away. The people in the stands, they're going to be 10 feet from a speaker.
There's going to be a speaker under every seat?
Well, how
are they going to be 10 feet away?
10 to 20 feet. What I'm suggesting is, if this was an option that the council wanted to take, and they obviously, any political decision must reflect the will of the jurisdiction, and they obviously must take in all the information that they've gotten from the good people of Franklin, as well as whatever information they've gathered on their own. The sound levels from the, I'm sorry, could you repeat the question again?
Well, we were just talking about, you know, the sound from the speakers being masked by the crowd.
Well, the sound from the speakers is because the people are going to be so close to the speakers in the stands, they will be able to hear it because they are within 10 to 20 feet of the speakers, whereas somebody who's 800 feet away from those same speakers will not, under those circumstances I've just described, be able to hear it.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up because it's got to be over 1,500 feet away. And on a typical game day, I can sit on my back patio, I hear the whistles from the game, and I can tell you what the coaches are saying to the crowd. So unless that coach is the sound of the airplane that you had up there, then there's something that's going on beyond 1,500 feet. Now, if I amplify that voice even more, I'm going to hear it even more.
Well, you know, I haven't, when I took my sound level measurements, as I said, I took it when the park was completely empty. I am not, and I've said this again, I'll repeat it again, I'm not saying that the crowd is not going to be audible. It is audible. You know that. I know that just from intuition. But what I've said is that if the sound system that I've said could probably work under those circumstances were put in place, it would be less loud than the crowds themselves.
But it will add to the crowd noise.
Sir, excuse me, your time's up.
Okay. Just one last thing that I want to say before I go is that you were talking about music on there too.
Right.
I don't expect to hear Barry Manilow. Okay, so that low-end frequency is what we are going to hear nonstop.
Who'd have believed? Thank you very much. And actually, if you can get back to me with the date of that meeting, I'll watch that whole meeting.
We should have it on we should have it in the meeting.
Which meeting was it? I mean, we've had 5 meetings about Middlebush Park. Do you know which meeting it was?
I guess I'll go do some research and find out when you had your meeting.
I'll watch that whole meeting and find out. Thank you, sir.
Hi, Vishnu Itwaru at 432 DeMont Lane. I too hear games being announced across the street from me. One question about I understand the approach or the options for the noise system or the sound system. I like the broadcasting via Wi-Fi idea. If there has to be a system in place, the noise control or the sound control from the audience, we haven't addressed that. My suggestion, or I would like to hear you on this, Mr. Eric, is that we consider acoustical panel around the stadium area or the seating area to sort of acoustical material just to absorb some of these sound from the audience or to dampen it so it doesn't reach that barrier.
That question was not posed to me. It was, the primary question I was asked is, can a sound system, to consider the possibility of a sound system, what are the various options for a sound system? Controlling the crowd noise was not something that we discussed, but I will say that any sort of a sound barrier, roughly, it's about $20 per square foot installed, roughly speaking. So you'd have to have a barrier that is, at least as high as the bleachers. It would have to be in the direction of the receptor as well, and to enclose this with sound barriers would be tens of thousands of dollars.
And I'm not talking about fixed panels. There are systems out there, I believe, that it's like louver, and you could stagger them. And you need a designer of this acoustical system to probably speak about it.
I'm sorry.
Has the council, has this ever came up as an option to control the noise from the crowd?
I don't want to dominate the meeting. Do you have a comment?
No, I was just going to say, if the chair, Councilman Kramer was chairing the meeting, I just wanted to suggest that I don't, you can speak about whatever you want, but I think we could take a pretty quick poll of the council. I don't think any of us have entertained going anywhere in the direction that I hear you're talking about, because it would just, to me, be cost and maintenance prohibitive. I don't even think that was even anywhere on the table, so not to dismiss what you're saying, but
to directly answer you, no, I do not believe council has ever entertained that. We are discussing now whether to have a sound system or not, but not attenuation of current noise at the fields.
Okay, I understand, because I understand we're discussing two sources of noise. One is from the broadcasting, and then we have the crowd noise, which I think if the sound system is tamed down to a broadcast via Wi-Fi, we still have the crowd noise. Thank you.
And it's Michael Adams, 324 Schilling Drive. I just want to make an observation. First of all, if I'm not mistaken, one of the councilmen that's the proponent of this entire project is not here to hear the expert. And, I think that's really in poor taste. But, excuse me. Another issue that came up with the with the Franklin Park proposal too is the concern whether this entire project is even needed. We've got parks in the area that no one knows if they're being fully utilized at this point, and we're spending money on these additional parks within our township. I think that's a concern, in addition to the additional traffic and everything else that it would entail, and that's pretty much it. But we need to have a use study of the existing parks that we have. You've heard this before.
No, we've had a use study. You paid $110,000 for it. It was done 3 years ago, of what our existing parks are and what our needs are.
And the existing parks are being used to what level? Such as Colonial Park?
I don't have a, well, no, it isn't, you're right. So the comments I'm hearing from council is it's not Franklin's Park, however, it was considered in it, and it is being used at the level that the public wishes to use it. The way the study was done was looking at towns throughout New Jersey, what they offer to their citizens, and that we were woefully under the level of parks provided by other towns in New Jersey. Now, recently, 3 of us have looked specifically at the parks that we have now, because there have been parks added, and we've subtracted from what our deficit was, and we are looking at the concept of adding facilities as we need them, rather than looking at area or land that we have and seeing what we can put there. But we are still under funded, under utilizing, or we do not have enough parks for our people still, compared to other towns.
Well, that goes to what was mentioned before in keeping up with the Joneses. We chose Franklin, we chose to invest our money in Franklin because of the open space. Some of this open space is now being converted to, parks with asphalt. It was also mentioned before too that we've taken down trees. I mean, to put these parks up, and again, it's not so much a park but a sports complex now. So those are things that many of us here find troubling.
Good points.
Hi, Mary Ann Moran, 5 Hunters Crossing Road. I don't think the lights or the sound system are necessary, but I have 3, I think, pretty basic concerns. First of all, I keep hearing the word park. Is this a park, or isn't it a park? Because I'm pretty sure we have an ordinance in town that says parks are closed at dusk. So I guess my first concern is that I believe you're the board that approved the lights in a park that closes at dusk, so I don't really know why lights were necessary. And number 2, at the last meeting I attended, which I believe was the last meeting, I have a big concern that in response to a question about the angle of the lighting, that our township manager stated there was nothing that he could do about the lights because they were already in place, but he could possibly address the angle of the lights. So why are we putting a sound system in? Let's just not put it in so that that's not the response we get for when there are noise complaints. And number 3, my observation this evening, listening to all of you, doesn't seem like a discussion on whether or not we should be putting a sound system in or not. Seems like you're trying to decide what type of sound system you want to put in.
Lorraine Shanks, 29 Magnolia Road. It can almost be laughable, the stuff that I'm hearing today from the gentleman here about the sound and frequencies. Several people have got up and said they can hear people from the park now without the speakers. Take the speakers off the table. Who is it up to? Is it up to the council, or is it up to the taxpayers? That's a question.
Do you want to answer?
Yeah, that's a
you want an answer
question.
to that?
Is it up to the taxpayers? Quite a few people here do not want, well, I would say everyone here do not want the speakers. I mean, do we need to go and get petitions signed? Do we need to get a certain number of people before you guys decide to take it off the table? How do we get you guys to just take the speakers off the table? That's the question. We don't want to just, we don't really care about frequencies, and we just don't want the speakers on the table. We don't want the speakers at the park. So what do we need to do to get you guys to decide to take the speakers off the table? That's a question. Hello.
So let me try.
I
don't know, is that
entire council here.
Okay. Not really. I mean, that was two questions I didn't get an answer to. Is it up to the council or is it up to the
Mr. Chair.
taxpayers? Who is it up to?
So despite your advice. So, this is a republic. It is up to the council. You voted, you asked a question, and I'm going to answer the question. It is up to the council, because you voted in the council members. That's how this country works. You voted in elected officials, and elected officials make the decision. What you can do to convince us not to, well, you are doing that in part. I cannot predict what council will do. I disagree with the fact that the last speaker, and I respect her point, your point in saying it, that it just seems like we're trying to decide which system to put in. We're not deciding whether or not to put it in. That's the purpose of this meeting, is to understand sound and to try to understand if we were going to put in a sound system, what the nature of that sound system would be. You are reading into our thoughts as to where we are going with this. I know of more than one council member who do not want a sound system at all. But I commend council for sitting here, getting all the information, including the information from you, and then making a decision. We also have 3 council members missing tonight. It would be unseemly to make a vote tonight on that. But all I can say is, trust me, you have the hearts of many of council members. Don't assume that we are putting in a sound system. I'm not saying we're not. I'm not saying we are.
Yeah, but that's what we're saying.
Well,
Okay?
Mayor, I think many people here know my position, but we represent this entire township. There is another constituency that is very vocal, that wants this. So it is our job to listen.
But we live here.
But
we
they
live near
here
the park.
too. They live here too. And
See, but you know what? This is
but,
not.
excuse me, I didn't
get my 5 minutes.
Interrupt you.
Am
I'm
I going to
sorry.
get my 5 minutes?
Excuse me, you yielded to her, you asked a question, you
That's right.
insisted that we answer your question, and she is answering your question.
I just want to make sure I'm going to get my 5 minutes because you two have been talking.
No, she is answering
and-
your question. If your time runs out, your time runs out.
If
Do you want to?
Then I'll just stand
I
back up
won't
again.
answer your
Do
question.
you want her
and
to
you
not
can make
answer, and
your
you can
comment.
have the rest of your time?
No, what I just want is no speakers.
Okay.
That's what we want.
And I
no-
just wanted
and we-
you to
and we've-
understand that
and
we
we've-
have to represent everyone, and we listen to both sides, we listen to all technologies, we're listening to what our options are, and one of the options is no speakers. Nobody's made a decision, but this is our job. And if we're going to be fair to every resident that lives here, we have to listen to all sides. I'm sorry if you don't want us to, but that's the way we work it, and that's the way I think you would want it if you were on the other side.
Of course, I would. Okay, I'm glad you answered that question, but, you know, it still just seems like to me that I'm listening to everyone come up here, and they're really pouring out how they really feel and, you know, about these speakers, and I haven't gotten what I got from you just now, not knowing that, okay, not everybody does not agree with with having the speakers
Okay.
or the council.
That's your time. So to be clear,
So
for anyone else that's your time limit. For anyone else who comes up, if you ask us a question, that answer comes, and you want an answer now, that answer comes out of your time. If you want to wait later, we can answer later, but if you insist on us answering, that comes out of your time. Next speaker, please.
Jim Calafiore, 234 Treptow Road. sometimes I worry about science getting lost in a vacuum, sort of numbers being calculated in a vacuum. You've got speakers pointing down at bleachers. You said the grass would absorb the sound. There's bleachers there. Bleachers will reflect sound. Did you look at the plans for the whole park? Have you seen the plans for the park?
Well,
The diagrams, the large diagram showing the full park.
No, I mean, I walked it.
Okay.
I don't know what you're...
Well, everything's not built, is it?
For those...
Everything's constructed? All the fields that were on the original plans, everything's constructed? Okay.
The only thing that's not built is the concession stand.
Okay. So, which is a solid structure that can reflect sound. And as why we're here is things can change. Other solid structures can be built to change the sound dynamics, correct? To reflect the sound instead of absorb it, potentially.
Well, yes, of course.
Okay. With your calculation on decibels to comfortably reach, I guess, the furthest person in the bleachers from the speakers, did you calculate that as if the people in the crowd were quiet?
If the people, at the level that I calculated at was between 75 and 80 decibels, if the people are quiet, if they're quiet, they'll hear it. If everybody is screaming, they won't hear the speakers.
Okay, that's what I'm talking about. There's a comfortable level you talked about for 3 feet away from talking to a person. If I'm alone in a room with that person, that's the level I speak at. If the room is full of 50 people, each trying to talk to each other, the level goes up and up and up. We know that. You're blanketing a crowd of people who are already making noise with sound that will interfere with their conversations that they're wanting to have and all the noise they're making. They're going to get louder and louder. It's not a finite equation. It's a potential to increase the sound. How many baseball fields are on the property?
1.
And just these 2 fields, that's it? 3 fields total?
Oh, no.
Okay.
No, there's 3 natural turf fields now, if you were to look at that picture above those 2
And I just
synthetic
worry
turf
about the
fields.
people on those fields saying, they got speakers. Why can't we have speakers? Then we'll be back here again and again. It's really just brief. If you really want to do something for the residents, do the Wi-Fi. And I suggest it'd be really great if you now propose an ordinance, or at a certain point in the future, propose and pass an ordinance, never, ever any speakers at the park. Thank you.
That tells you how short I am.
Or how tall he is.
Roma Malkana, 3 Gorgan Way, at the other end of Gorgan Way from the fields. You've seen me here at several meetings, pretty much all of them. I remember you all sitting here till midnight one meeting, and I want to thank you all for giving us this opportunity again. The concerns are the same. I feel I should not use up my full 5 minutes just because I have them. You are all very aware of all our concerns, and so I would just like to say, though, that I have also raised 4 kids in another township where there were no speakers. The youngest is now 28. All 4 of them have done, God bless them and me, have done wonderfully well without the speakers, actively participated in the sports, got graduate degrees, and are doing excellently in this country. Thank God again. Why do we need these speakers, as somebody said before me? It is true, I was there at the meetings 3 years ago when the park was being discussed. We were told it's going to be a park, no lights, no sound. I'd like that sign changed that says Middlebush Park, because I think by no definition is it a park anymore. It's more of a sports complex, and definitely, thank you. And with all the fields thrown in and the lights already there, concession stands coming, the speakers, if they come, renting to other townships for revenue, which I've heard talk about. All these, you've heard it all from us. So the question is, like the lady said, what does it take for you to not waste any more time at these meetings, your precious time also, and take this issue off the table? How much is the township spending on researching this speaker system and its effects? Where is the research to show that we even need these speakers in the first place? And I can hear, I'm told I shouldn't bring up money as an issue because we want to keep the sympathy of the council members who are supporting us. And I do know that there are some who are. But money is a fact of life. We've worked 40 years in this country, and we have made our homes our main investment that we want to retire in peace and quiet. My 28-year-old son lives with me. My 68-year-old husband wants the peace and quiet as much as my son does. My son has been here at this meeting and spoken about the lights and the sounds that we hear, the cheering that we hear now without any speaker system. How can you guarantee that these speakers will be maintained at the certain angle that the gentleman has recommended? How are we to say that at some point it's not going to go all haywire, just like we were told there would be a barrier of trees, there would be no lights, there would be no sound, and yet we're now standing here arguing about all these things. So there is no guarantees. This thing will just go on and on and on. We need to close for your sakes as well as ours. I don't want to have to come here to protest against the speakers anymore. I want it down on record once and for all that all the people who are here tonight and who have been, if I may have the liberty to speak for all, who have attended previous meetings, some are not here tonight, that if we have expressed it once, we've expressed it 100 times. Let's move on. We need a decision. Let's move on.
So we can put their name on.
Thank you.
I'm not saying it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jeanette Rodriguez, 340 DeMont Lane. I just had a quick question. I think it was Mrs. Sherman, you had said that there's a lot of people that did want speakers. Was that a separate meeting? Because I would imagine everybody here tonight is saying, no, we don't want them. And I understand you have to weigh pros and cons, but where are the people that actually want the speakers?
I'm actually astounded. I'm sorry, I don't mean to take your time.
No, that's all I'm saying. I don't want them, and where are the people that do?
I am astounded that they haven't come out in mass. Every meeting, I expect them, and they don't show up. And, the bottom line is, if they're not making their issue known, it is to their default. It is they're defaulting by not coming. But they were here originally. They did come. So you can't. I doubt it.
Yeah, they told me they did. My name is Tom Moran, 5 Hunters Crossing Way. First, a question for you. I live in Hunters Crossing, which is 0.6 of a mile from the Stage House. And I don't know what kind of speaker system they have, but at 0.6 of a mile, I can hear their music just fine. At 0.4 of a mile over to the park, why won't I hear them?
I'm not familiar with the facility that you're
The council is.
And you know what, Eric, I'll give you a little background. Well, number one, sir, and Eric, you can then add to this. The Stage House is bound by the township ordinance, which is set at 65 decibels at a real property line. What Mr. Zwirling has discussed is a sound system that would be limited to 40 decibels at a real property line, and it was one of the reasons why I asked Mr. Zwirling to come here, is to explain the difference between 65 at a property line versus 40 at a property line. So the reason why you can hear the Stage House when they are operating and they're bound by our ordinance, which says 65 dB at a property line, that's the difference between what Mr. Zwirling has spoken about here with the park versus what we experienced with the Stage House. And just a real quickie.
I would wager it's even less than that. And that's the
Might
point.
be.
That's the point that we're all trying to make here is 40 decibels, 65 decibels, it's still noise. It's not the quiet peacefulness of my home. It's not stars and the birds. It's noise. And you said that people in town want this. We don't. There are hundreds of us that are totally impacted, our lives, our homes, our families, close to this area. Everybody has said, we've all given you reasons why we don't want. I really would like to hear what is the benefit that we're going to derive from having a speaker system. There isn't one. By your own admission, if everybody's making noise in the stands, the speaker system may not be loud enough for even them to hear what's being said. But it will compound and complex the noise that's already being there from the crowd out into the surrounding area. You started out with a definition of quiet, and you also started out with the definition of expectation of peacefulness. That's where we need to be. Let's make a decision on yes or no, and I hope it's no, but if it is a no, you have an app way out which doesn't impact the world. I would ask you to please consider that. And if they don't come out and defend why we should have this, I don't think that you should consider them. Consider us. We're here, and we want you to listen. Thank you.
All right. My name is Benjamin Guy, 35 Patton Drive. So I'll be the one to actually go against the green for the room at all. So I'll be a proponent for why the speaker system should be done. It is not really for, it's not really for me as an individual. It's not really for, I guess, most of the taxpayers that are here. It's really for the youth. One of the things that I guess we're really getting away from is that actual sporting complex. It really represents something for the youth. They really enjoy themselves when they get there. How it's actually set up, how it's actually looking like the town actually supports their activities, how they actually looks like the town is actually really invested in their future because they're looking at staying here for 10, 15, 20 years. Some of the people that are here, I'm not sure how long you've actually been here as far as residents concerned, but I've been here. Yeah, I've been here about 25 years
speak,
myself.
please.
So, yeah, so I understand what exactly.
Excuse me, let him speak.
So, can I
Sir?
speak first or no? Thank you. All right. So, listen, these people are looking for, their actual investment of how the town is actually changing their lives because they don't really have a choice on where to go or what to do. The actual complex looks like something that the actual town is making for them. So, I know that it's noisy, just like the high school was noisy. I live next to the high school all the time. I lived here during the 90s when we actually used to have football games and you could hear it all the way out to New Brunswick at all. It's the same type of thing. We just shifted where the actual where the noise is coming from. There's no more traffic at the middle school or what have you. So those people are not dealing with the sound that was dealing with in the 90s. It's the same type of thing. They just shifted where the circumference was, and we all went through it, and we all went through it that lived on that side of town. I live off of Patton Drive. I can hear the high school all the way over there by JFK Boulevard, where the old high school was. We had to deal with that. Now, when we shift and we all voted that we wanted to improve this town as a whole, and we wanted to develop out the complex, Middlebush, and it grew, and then the town council voted on different expansion efforts, now it becomes a problem when we actually go in a different direction at all. So for me, it's more about the youth than anything else. And the reason why most of the people are not here is because, again, they're working families just like everybody else in the room. But again, most of the people don't get this information that's here. The people that you're actually talking to, they don't get this information. They have to be home. They have 3, 4 kids they have to take care of. I'm not saying that anybody doesn't have that, but most of the people in this room, I don't see whether or not they work 2 or 3 jobs at all, and they are bearing that stuff. I'm not trying to be disrespectful to anybody here. But the reason why a lot of people are not here to defend themselves is because, again, they're working. I'm not saying that you're not taking out time from your busy schedule, but at the same time frame, a lot of these people are really working. And like I said, you can get mad at me all you want. You can give me frowny faces. But again, I'm the only person probably going to be here to step against the grain and actually speak about what exactly I feel about how the youth are actually being affected for this town. So again, I'm a Pop Warner coach. I see a lot of the people that are here. I'm a wrestling coach. I work with the kids a lot of time frames. I see what they go through. They need some type of way to actually call their home with this town. And I don't see that they want to call this town their home as much as they wanted it in the past. So that Middle Bush Park represents a lot for them. So you guys might not understand that, but again, you come there, talk to some of those kids, go to schools and talk to those kids and see how they act and see what their eyes look like at all when they go to that Middle Bush Park. It's a way out for a lot of kids. So thank you.
There is a line, oh, that's not a line back there?
That's a line.
Elisa Medrano, 13 Gangway. I just want a question about what he said.
No, you have
sorry,
to,
not allowed.
you have to address council. You could go up to him later and ask him,
Well,
but
a broad question again. Everybody heard what he said, and
Speak in the microphone, please.
everybody heard what he said, and still it's not clear to me why the speakers will change the lives of the youth.
no, sir, you can only speak once, I'm sorry. No.
My name's
So you can address her separately, but you cannot come up and speak again.
My name's Chris Williams. I live at 20 Magnolia Road. If I'm not mistaken, history has shown us that we wanted to put a bike path behind some people's houses. They come out, you turn the bike path down. Twice. There was 2 bike paths. Twice you turn them down because they're going to affect people. Well, this park's affecting people. You told them there were going to be no lights when you first started this park. You told them that you were going to leave a 50-yard buffer with trees. The trees are gone. You know? And now you want to put speakers in? Give me a break.
Council, my name is Bob Maggio. I live at 26 Cedar Brook Drive. This is my home, too. I have 2 children. This is their home, Franklin Township, regardless of what that other gentleman said. My kids played Little League Baseball. I was a Little League Baseball coach. I was on the board of the Franklin Township Little League. We didn't need speakers to play. Let me tell you something. When I coached, it was great. Those kids loved what they were doing. I don't think they needed speakers either. You can tell it in their faces, just the fact that they were on the field, they had the chance to play. Tom, I think his name is Tom over here at Hunter's Crossing, he mentioned it was something that the question that I was actually going to say, and it was exactly the words that he said. Where's the benefit? What is the benefit of having speakers? How does that change what the children are already doing? I think they have what they need. I spoke at the last meeting back in June, I think it was 24th. I pointed out where all of you council people lived. The average distance of all of you where you live is 2 3/4 miles away as the crow flies from this park. If I drop the low number and I drop the high number of where the person that lives the farthest and the person that lives the closest, you're still 2 1/4 miles away. You're not going to hear this. I'm the closest one of all of you. I'm 3/10 of a mile away, 1,500 feet, at Cedar Brook Drive, the other side of DeMott Lane. You ever hear a barking dog? Does it get on your nerves? I'm sure that barking dog isn't 40 or 50 decibels, but it's there, and it can go on for 20 and 30 minutes. Could you imagine, I'm living where I live, I'm downwind of the Stage House, of the Palace, with the fireworks that are every Saturday or Friday night with those, with what you pass for giving them permits for their 15 or 20 minutes of fireworks. I'm going to hear this all day on a Saturday, all day on a Sunday. Even if it's 20 decibels, I'm going to hear it. It's going to be there. It's another layer of noise. And I brought this up the last time, too. You have to consider this. You mentioned about the looking out for everyone in the township. Well, those people that are going to use the field get to go home. They get to go back to their residences. Back to where their peace and quiet is and what they're used to. We don't. We're going to be stuck with it for this entire time. Remember, it doesn't matter whether it's this much noise or this much noise. It's this and this and this and this. And it continues.
Thank you, sir. That's your time.
Thank you very much for listening to me. Do the right thing. Please vote this down. Don't even consider it. Thank you.
Brian Ulrich, 209 Wilson Road. I have just a couple of short statements and questions. You had said that while you were talking, given your speech about noise and sound, if I was having a low conversation behind you, would that be noise or sound or annoying? Because I'm going to be sitting on my deck and I'm going to hear the noise.
Well, obviously, it depends upon, if
In that 40 decibel quiet zone where it's quiet and you got the noise going on in the background?
I honestly believe, it's my opinion based upon the analysis I've done, that if these speakers are 40 decibels at the property line, that you won't hear it on your property. That's,
Okay.
During a game day, if it was being played on a weekday when there's nothing going on in the park, then you might be able to hear it, but it would be just basically at the threshold of audibility.
These speakers, that being said, you said the 40 decibel at the property line, but an ambient noise is 40. You said before about the 2 alarm clocks at 70 really aren't 70, then they kind of magnify and create 73, right?
Yeah, the total would be 73.
If these speakers were going on in the park, would they tend to, I have my daughter and my wife, and we all do things in the same room, and I turn up the TV louder, and my daughter turns up her computer louder, and my wife starts talking on the phone louder, and before you know it, you can't hear anything. And TV's at like 90. Would these speakers have a tendency to rally and make the noise, the ambient noise, the crowd, louder?
Of course. It
Right.
is possible. It is possible.
Would the same noise every single weekend, because we can't move or leave, that constant dripping on your forehead, would that be annoying? Is that an annoying noise?
Well, if
Like when a phone rings in the crowd.
if you so believe, then it is so.
You said you heard 287 when you were at the park.
I heard traffic off in the distance. I was not absolutely certain exactly.
Like 287 is like 8,000 feet away.
It might have been Amwell, it might have been DeMott. I'm not sure exactly where it was from.
I live on Wilson Road, and it's about a mile from my house to the church. I don't know which church is, but I hear church bells at 6 o'clock every night. Middlebush, that's a mile. Church bells. How loud is that for the people right next to it?
Well,
what's it that for it to be a mile from my house that I can hear it?
Those church bells are probably about 80 decibels at about 50 feet, which is very different than 80 decibels at 10 feet. As I described, it's a very different number.
But then, with the reducing it every so many feet and every time it doubles, I mean, I'm a mile, but I can still hear it.
Actually, about a half a mile. I just
I'm at
measured
the end
it.
of Wilson, at the.
I just measured it. It's about a half a mile. You want to take a look? It's about a half a mile.
Okay. Getting on to the park study and, you know, what other towns have and what we don't have. You know, people moved here from what I can hear, you know, for what Franklin is now. That's why we moved here. And, you know, there are other towns that are going to have more things or different things. And the people that want those things, they move to those towns. We moved to this town for what this town offers. This town offers a unique set of properties, and we moved here for that. We didn't move here for that. If I wanted to be next to sports, I would have moved over there. If I wanted to be near something that offered fishing, I would have moved up by Spruce Run. I didn't move there. I like to do those things, but I didn't move there. I moved here. Finally, when you're speaking, you know how like when you're singing in the car to the music? When my voice and the radio, they hit that certain spot where they kind of like harmonize, and it seems like it gets louder. Do you know what I'm talking about? You know when they harmonize like kind of, and it kind of like gets real clear and louder. Will that create peaks in the sound that carry further? You know what I'm talking about?
I do. I mean, but you'd have to be at exactly the same harmonic. I mean, it could happen.
Well, there's gonna be a lot of frequencies.
I mean, it has to occur not only at the same frequency, but also has to occur at the same point in the wave. Is it possible? Yes. Would it be predominant? No. It would be. Would it be infrequent? If it occurred, it would be very infrequent.
Okay. Council, thank you very much for your time. I mean, I couldn't do your job. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
My name is Jane Tsai, 361 Cotswold Place. I think the problem we run into, the root of problem, of course, really is we have a sports complex in the middle of a crowded residence. It's supposed to be a park, passive park. Has a trees, flowers, walking a bike on a bike path, whatever. Not the kind of a sports complex we are expecting. That's what the problem is, the traffic, the lights, the speaker. That's why we all here are complaining about it today. Last time I was here, I don't remember, a couple months ago, I asked the question, what costs each unit the property tax for this for the parks? I don't get a straight answer because nobody cares about it.
I'm happy to answer that. We
Go ahead.
actually have answered that. The park cost $8.4 million. It came out of open space except for $400,000 of it, which was to this gentleman. That was the portion that was quote-unquote donated by the developer. The $8 million came out of open space tax, which is a tax you pay every year, 5 cents on every 100 that you pay, and we use it to buy open space, recreation, historic preservation, and farmland preserve. We call it open space tax, but it actually is a tax for all of those. Whether we built this park or didn't build this park, it would have cost you the same in taxes. The only thing I know of worse than charging taxes is charging taxes and not spending them. So we still are buying tons of open space, but yes, this money went to recreation.
If you charge the taxes, if you don't spend it, you can put it in a reserve.
No, not this money.
Now, this money has to be used for those purposes. It
And this-
can't cross over.
And this money wasn't a council decision, this was a resolution, a referendum that went out to the people, and the people voted for this. And the people most recently voted to spend county money on recreation, not just on open space. So to me, that was a poll of people's decisions that this money should be spent on recreation.
That's fine. If we don't spend on this park, we can build more parks, right? Like you suggested, we can have more parks.
That's absolutely valid.
Good. So why don't we spend the money on this one and causing all the problems to the residents? This is congested, crowded residents. Why do we have to go through this? Next question. Question or alternative is, can we convert this sport complex back to the regular park and move the sport complex to some other locations? Since we are in a continual process to have more parks, right? Why don't we move to some other place so we can get a peace and quiet in the neighborhood? Next question. I guess we all agree when the property value goes down, one of the reasons is we lose quiet and peace neighborhood. When the property value goes down, I expect we will collect less of the revenue for a township. What's the alternative? One is we have to pay up more tax dollars for a township. The other alternative I expect is somebody will get laid off or will get reduced the service. I don't know, is the library hours get reduced, get cut off, or some other service, maybe summer program get reduced, kids program get cut down. I don't know. But one or the other, we either have to jack up the property tax, or we have to cut down the service. So what's the alternative? Another thing the councilman talked about, we spend money for the different study. I do have a proposal for a township manager. Maybe you can do some estimate how much tax we'll have to end up paying for this. When the property value goes down 5%, how much we have to chip in to cover the loss, the loss of property tax, because everybody's property value go down. We still have the same kind of expenses. How are we going to cover up these expenses? Maybe we can put it in different categories. 5%, 10%, 20%.
Thank you. That's your time. Thank you very much. All good points.
Hi, my name is Suzanne Maggio. I live at 26 Cedar Brook Drive. I just have a very quick comment. I think, speaking for everyone here, I don't think most of us are anti-park at all. I think for me, listening to everybody has been really good. It's kind of helped me sort of like drill down to what the real main thing is for me personally. We all have something personal about it. And I don't think we're anti-park. I think it's a beautiful park, and I think it was needed. And I think as the gentleman who was speakers who had a lot of courage getting up and speaking at this group, I listened to what he had to say. I think he was a little bit in error as far as making some sort of a judgment about what type of people are in the room. I do have children in town. My son goes to the high school. I'm a 27-year resident. I live in my current home at 26 Cedar Brook Drive, which is for about 15 years. When we moved there, we knew there were soccer fields there. There are soccer fields right behind my house. And I was not aware of how noisy it would be. There are no speakers. But I didn't beat myself up over it because I said, wow, we really didn't know how noisy it would be. And the real experience of it for 15 years, I have a lot of friends who kids play soccer. I'm not anti-soccer at all. But what I do as soon as soccer season starts, I do close my windows. You must close your windows. I've gotten used to it, and I've rationalized it. It's the sound of children. It's definitely about for the kids, and it's a great thing. It's something for them to do. It keeps them off the streets. I totally get that. But the absolute experience of it is, I also believe living in New Jersey, because it's so crowded, I kind of don't have the expectations that I'll have the luxury of being able to sit on my porch and not hear any of my neighbors, because I'm on less than an acre. I accept that. But I think for the first time, my husband and I are thinking about moving from the town. And it's really sad because we love our neighborhood, but we already have the noise, and soccer season's going to start up again. It's a little bit less now than Middlebush Park has been established, but between that and now this, we are starting to think whether we want to continue making this our home. And I think it's just a matter for me and almost everyone here, it's a matter of a threshold. You know, when do you stop? You know, at what point do you take it forward? And I would just ask the council as public servants, I really do appreciate your time listening to everybody. I know it must be difficult sitting up there and listening to it, but as you said, Ms. Sherman, it is your job. We do understand that. But it's just, it really is about a quality of life, and it certainly has to do with people working very hard to live in homes. I know some people who live in homes in some of the affected areas who've recently lost their jobs, and they have families to support. So I hope we don't have to move from Franklin Township. I really don't want to do that. I have another child heading into Franklin Middle School. I'm very involved in the schools. That's really basically what I wanted to say. Thank you so much.
My name is Catherine Samini, and I am at 19 Hunters Crossing, and I think everybody on this council knows darn well I don't want some speakers in that park if it's at all possible, but no one has mentioned, and I think it's important, especially in light of the discussion of what would be heard. We have 3 nursing homes, assisted living complexes in a very short distance, and I'm curious if that went into any kind of calculation. I came in a little late, so I didn't quite see your whole presentation, but I will watch it on the replay. But I do appreciate that you tried to get ambient noise, and you're trying to set if there would be a specification, that specification would be set relatively low. I think that's what I heard, is that basically what you were trying to do, so I appreciate that. I would prefer not to have speakers. I would prefer to have, if there has to be some form of announcing, that there be some sort of a more 21st century decision. But did anybody take into consideration the nursing home situation and what they would hear, because they're very close?
I did my calculations to the very closest residences that were roughly 800 feet from the bleachers. In the directions that I looked at. I know there are some nursing homes down DeMott, but I do believe that they're at a slightly greater distance. So whatever statements that I made about the perceived inaudibility at the property line of the residences would certainly apply to nursing homes. Nursing homes also are generally, the envelope construction is fairly substantial, so those speakers would certainly be inaudible inside the nursing home itself.
Yeah, it's my understanding that a lot of times they bring people out to sit outside.
Yeah,
So
I mean, again, as I said, you know, if again, I believe that the crowd noise they wouldn't be playing the speakers on a day when there isn't crowd noise. The crowd noise would be louder, would be my estimation.
And I believe it was talked about, but I just want to revisit this for a second. If we did have speakers and they were directed towards the bleachers, your comment is the bleachers would get the majority of the sound and it wouldn't travel that far, right?
Yeah, in essence.
Okay. But, as a number of people have pointed out, when someone's trying to say something to somebody and there's sound in their background, they get louder. And there's no way to actually control that unless we go to a huge expense, which no one seems to want to do. I don't know, $8.4 million, maybe we can go another couple of hundred
million?
A couple of 100,000, put a couple of baffles in, I don't know. But my point is that I think that what was raised here was that if we have a sound in the background, it tends to make my conversation a little louder to make sure that I can be heard. And now if I'm louder, the person next to me tends to get louder, and it escalates.
Yes, that's a valid point.
And there's no way to control that.
No.
So the presence of the speakers will create more noise.
It will increase the sound level of the crowd, probably.
Thank you very much.
Before you leave, if I could get your email address and your contact number, because I saw what time you came in, and you have been present at every one of these meetings, and you did not have the opportunity to see Mr. Zwirling's presentation beforehand, because you came in just as he ended, and we went to public portion.
Okay.
And I would actually like you to see the science of all of this as
Perfect.
well.
Perfect.
So I will make that, because you have been so dedicated to this cause, I would like to make that available to you.
Thank you very much.
So we'll talk tomorrow or whenever it is, but we'll get the information. If you
Absolutely.
could get that to me today, that would be great.
Absolutely. And I just, before I leave, want to say one more time, thank you very much to the council, because I do believe that, I appreciate, and I will say in advance, I'm not going to be here at the next meeting, because I'm going to be out of the country. But I do appreciate the work that you're doing, and I appreciate you listening to all of us. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Bo Shu. I live at number 12 Gorgan Way, and I've been a long time Franklin Township resident for over 40 years. I've paid my fair amount of taxes. Recently moved into this neighborhood, and we're familiar with the park. I quote park, not the sports complex. We're not against the park. We're not against recreation. We have personally put in time with our two kids, two fine young boys who've gone through the township schools. They went through, we coached soccer at the SGS. Wonderful opportunity, no need for speakers. The point I'm trying to make here is we are going to be new residents. I was appalled when I first saw the lights, right? Is it a park? Is it a complex? We do take advantage of the basketball courts. It's a wonderful opportunity. We are not anti-sports. This is not a sports complex. The residents want to have peace. We bought this house recently so we can open up our patio door and sit outside. I do not want to have 15 decibels of penetration through my walls. I have an advanced degree in physics, so I understand that. Thank you. I really appreciate that. We want to have open spaces. Trees do not block unless we want to put a big sound barrier between ourselves, okay? I appeal to every single one of you council members, because you do not live there, be sensitive to what we have to go through now, okay? I really like Council Member Rajiv Prasad's suggestion for an innovative solution. I'll be glad to participate in that. I would also like to vigorously support any effort to oppose this. Speaker systems add no value. I would like to understand what value is this providing? What problem are we trying to solve with speakers? Noise is cumulative, right? Coherent sound is worse. Random sound cancels. Coherent amplifies. Speakers on top of a crowd of 50 dB can peak at 80 to 90, right? If they're harmonics. Everybody knows that. So I'll be glad to engage in a technical discussion offline and later on if there is a decision to go ahead with this, because I will vigorously oppose it. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, seeing that there's no one else from the public willing to speak, I make a motion we close the public portion of this discussion.
Second.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
I also would like to make a motion that we amend the agenda and have our council comments so people can hear from us directly what we're thinking. And then we can, at that point, go on to the standing committee reports and the other council discussion items.
Do I have a
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? So we will now, what we've just done is changed the order of speaking so that people can listen to what we have to say, our opinions on this. So we'll begin council comments with Mr. Chase.
It's difficult to sit here and want to respond to you all and say, yes, I completely agree with you, and we should vote this down right now. But Councilman Wright is the principal proponent of the speakers, or at least that's my perception, and I don't think we can take an action until he is here to have his say. That said, I'm certainly not convinced that the speakers are a necessary addition to the use of the park by the youth. I think we've heard Dr. Zwirling. Scientifically, I agree. I think he's made a point that it will really be, if properly designed, speakers will make very little effect at the edge of the park. But I've also heard all of you, and I think the basic point is whether you can hear them or not, you don't want them because you don't want to find out whether you can hear them. So that's really what affects me right now. I had something else I want to, and a second thing which actually I would be referring to in making a report from the Public Works Committee. I think the manager will report on his meeting with some residents, particularly at the end of Gauguin Place, about the visual barrier since the trees were cut down, and this is, I didn't want those trees cut down. In fact, I wanted the trees that would have to be cut down to be moved to make more of a visual barrier, but contractors paid no attention. Anyway, so that's something, if you stay, those who are interested to stay can hear about that. I did have a little speech up among the ordinances that are proposed for introduction is a water conservation ordinance. This is something I've been working on since before I was on the council. It's an important thing for our Sustainable Jersey certification, and various members of the council have commented on it, and it has been, pun somewhat intended, watered down over the years. But it is an ordinance recommended by Sustainable Jersey. It follows recommendations by experts at the DEP. It's directed only at outdoor uses of water. Indoor use is not regulated. For most homeowners in the township, it is advisory, not mandatory. It's intended to educate, to get people to reduce water use, which is not really necessary, conserving water supply before we have an emergency. What it urges people to do is water only twice a week. Water before 9 a.m. or after 5 p.m. Water any given area for only 30 minutes. Don't water while it's raining. And this is based on recommendations from turf grass specialists who know what grass really needs. And in particular, if we have a very dry August, your grass may look very dry and dead, but it'll come back when the rains come again in September. The provisions for a real drought emergency remain the same. They are just in a different part of the ordinance. The non-emergency restrictions on homeowners are mandatory only for those who are on wells in areas of small lots, such as Griggstown, Charles Street, and University Heights. And I can remember summer before last, there were people from Charles Street in complaining that their wells were running dry. Where concern is that excessive use of well water might affect the neighbors' wells. Even there, township enforcement is likely only if lawn watering is excessive to the point that somebody calls in about it. I've had one call about such from somebody in Griggstown who was concerned about the watering a neighbor was doing. There are some technical provisions about what are called smart controllers. These, at the minimum, sense whether it's raining. Beyond that, a real smart controller either senses how dry the ground is or utilizes weather forecasts, or how long it's been since the last rain, and controls whether watering occurs. These are mainly for corporate lawns, possibly homeowner association lawns, users that are big enough to hire an expert and generally to minimize their water use because they're paying for that water. Of course, one effect of this is it'll probably actually decrease the amount of water the township sells, but we provide water as a necessary governmental service, not as something to make money for the general budget on. There are exemptions for rain barrels and gray water, farms, golf courses. Our county-owned golf courses are certified river-friendly for their careful use of water. For chemical treatments, new lawns, and home and community gardens, all of these are exempted from these restrictions. So I just want to make the point, perhaps those of you who came here about the sound systems are not that interested in this, but I'm speaking also to the people watching the council meeting on Channel 29 and speaking to the rest of the council. So I think I've probably taken enough time with comments. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chase. Ms. Sherman?
I'm next.
I'm doing it my way. I guess not.
She's talking.
All right, we'll come back to Roz.
He was trying to change up the
I'm
order.
changing it up. Stay alive. Ms. Sherman, you're next.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I was too busy getting filled in on some details. You guys really have stated your positions very well. In fact, I don't want to see you here anymore. I know how you feel. I truly, and I, don't forget, this is my ward. I have been involved in this project from the very, very beginning, and my heart has been with the residents from the very, very beginning. We did try to mitigate some of the intensity of the fields, but there was such a huge demand and a momentum. It had a life of its own. And I appreciate those who said they understand that the need was there, but I personally have made it very clear that speakers were never supposed to be there, and as far as I'm concerned, they never will be there. But I'm not the only person on this council. That's my opinion. I think there's more than, meets the eye as far as some of the other teams wanting it or not wanting it, and I personally don't have a clear picture, but I think we need to get all the information, as I said, and then I'm very certain we'll do what is the right thing for the township. I feel I know what's right for my constituents, but again, I'm only one person. So you do have some support, and enough said. Let me just go on to a few other things that, on other issues, since you're going to sit through council comments, lucky you. I don't know whether you are aware of it, but Somerset County has been named the 5th best county in the United States. And we are extremely lucky to live in this area. There are so many things for our residents that coming here was my first move into Somerset County. I'm from Essex County originally. I've lived in Middlesex County. I've lived in Union County, and there definitely is a difference. It's marvelous. I love living here, and this is well deserved. On top of which, New Jersey is the 8th best state to raise kids. Who'd have thunk it? So we've got lots going here in this state. So we have much to be proud of, and we do have a very educated constituency in the state, but particularly in this area between Rutgers and Princeton. We're very blessed. Many of you know about Elijah's Promise in New Brunswick, and I am really thrilled that they have opened up a Better World Market, one of their markets here in Franklin Township. We are really lucky. They're at 1743 Route 27, and they're open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., and a little earlier opening and earlier closing on the weekends, but we should all make sure we get there. Okay. Oh, they're only, okay, I'm sorry, they're Thursdays and Fridays at 8. Okay, I probably read this wrong, and Saturdays from 8 to 5, so thank you for that clarification, but we're very lucky to have it. Two other things, and then we'll move on to another council person. We have had several comments from residents who lose sound during the broadcasts. They can't hear what's being said. Happens periodically, and that's because our equipment is quite old, and we are hopefully going to be replacing it, and that should go away. But what would you say, 6 months, 8 months down the road?
As soon as we can negotiate with Comcast on our franchise agreement, we will be able to then fund the replacement of the equipment.
Okay, so then you'll be able to hear every word distinctly. And the last, and far from the least, is the Franklin Day Festival that my committee, part of the Performing Arts Committee of the Cultural Arts Committee in Franklin, is on September 20th. It's in Colonial Park. We have bands, we have entertainers, we have children's games, we have crafts for the children. We have crafters who will be selling things, artists who will be selling things. We will have food. It's the first year that we're going to do a real festival, and my feeling is it's going to be an ongoing yearly event that everybody's going to be looking forward to. So please put it on your calendars, bring the family. It's free. We'll have, even the township is going to put up a tent, sort of like what you see at the 4-H fair. We'll have township departments there. You can speak to the recreation department, you can speak to the tax assessor, or whoever our manager decides will be there, but it will be, I think, a marvelous event, and one the township will be very proud to have on an ongoing basis. Thank you. September 20th, and it will run from 12 until noon. I think some of the crafters will be set at 12 until 7 o'clock at night. I'm sorry. 12 noon until 7 o'clock at night. Some of the crafters may start about 11:30, but the official start time is 12 noon, until 7. Thank you. It's right across from the children's playground where the pavilion is located. That whole mall in front of the pavilion will be filled with all of the tables and the vehicles and the tents.
Thank you, Mr. Vasanella.
Yes, so without being repetitive here, just a couple of things that stick out in my mind about why I couldn't support speakers, permanent installation that would then broadcast all days worth of games for whatever amount of months of the year. Well, let me start off by saying a handful of meetings ago when this was, I think, discussed either the first or second time we had a large crowd here, I had said I was open-minded to it, but I would need to be convinced it was something that we needed and it was worth doing. I haven't been convinced. I've been open-minded with it. I've talked to a couple of council people, and I don't want to speak for council, but I believe there are just a couple that wanted it, or let's just say really, really wanted it. And I just haven't, I haven't been convinced. My opinion hasn't changed. I think it was a good discussion to have. Quite honestly, I don't think we had to put we'll sit here for many meetings, we have to, but I didn't think we needed to put staff and the people that are here and the people who have come to many meetings, including the people in favor of it, through what we've put them through. I think it's just been because it's a new subject area and because for us as a town in a certain way, because of our building out of our parks and recreation, and because of timing and because of technology. So it had to be done, go through this process, it went through this process. I can't speak for the rest of the council here. I tend to think that if there was a vote now, it would be a large majority, if not unanimous, to not do this. I do agree, out of respect to Councilman Wright, whether I agree with him or not on the matter, I do believe that I would want any of us to be afforded the same respect to have a final discussion and vote when that person and perhaps another that had some interest in having it are here. So I have no problem waiting for that. Unfortunately, it couldn't all be done on the same night, but I think we got through a lot tonight that we had to get through. In defense of Eric, Eric, I believe, the gentleman handling that, we went to him for some unbiased technical data, and I appreciate what he brought, and I believe it is objective, independent technical data. But just a couple of quick points in closing that I wouldn't expect him to comment on or be subjective about, because that's not why we asked him to come here, but I think it was mentioned by some of the people. And that, first of all, when you have it announcing that type with loudspeakers, I would think, just like a DJ at the wedding, the whole idea is to get people revved up and revved up and revved up. And in one way, that's a good thing. But I think that does bring a magnifying, or whatever you want to call it. It will just make things more and more and more and more and more. So almost it would become a victim of its own success if you did have an all-engaging sound system, even with the strict regulations that were suggested. But again, we needed the messenger and we needed the information, but facts like that, and just to throw out a couple others that are meaningful to me, and I do want to, the gentleman, I don't know if he stepped outside, I give him a lot of credit for coming and speaking in favor of it, because although it's hard to get up there and speak, as you all know, when you have a whole crowd supporting you, so when you have no one supporting you, I give him a lot of credit. And one other thing about that, I think there was more support earlier on, and there could be 100 people come next week and say, Councilman Vest, no, we still want it, you're wrong. I honestly believe when people step back and have been watching this for a few months, that they may think it's as big of a priority as they once thought it was. But anyway, I saw Bridgewater recently. I was looking around one of their areas, just passing through. A lot of the stadiums where they have the announcing aren't necessarily in these, quote, tranquil residential type areas. So I think there are places they fit in certain towns, and perhaps eventually in Franklin somewhere. I don't think this is the area for it. And the other thing is, it isn't a high school. I think when people move into an area that surrounds a high school, they have to. I believe they should think that there's a chance either there is systems in place or would be, because you're talking about a high school is really the calling card of a town with athletics and the whole pep rally thing. This isn't the high school, though. So I appreciate, I could hear some of the high school noise over the years when there was much less noise pollution, noise all over town, and I live about a mile from there and I could hear announcements. But anyway, again, this isn't high school. So in closing, I'm simply not convinced. We should have a vote when the other council people are here. I think it simply comes down to the priorities that were decided by the people in the study that we did, the needs assessment study. There was priorities like maintain the parks you have, better maintenance, enhance the parks you have, preserve some land. There were a lot of, you go back and look, it's online, priorities. Even I don't really remember this even registering as something that was desired. I'm sure there were some people who said it in all the interviews and random surveying they did, but it definitely doesn't register as a priority. So to me, I think we need to concentrate our efforts going forward on the items that were listed as priorities by the entire township. Thank you.
Mr. Prasad.
Thank you, Dr. Kramer. In defense of Carl Wright, it is his 25th wedding anniversary. Yes. He is in Atlantic City, And I would say that, happy anniversary to Carl Wright. And he's a smart man. He's better in Atlantic City celebrating his anniversary than being here. I also want to thank Dr. Eric Zorling for all the effort, and this is part of being in a democracy, that we gather all the facts, and you should be glad that this is a township that paid for one of the world's leading authorities from Rutgers University to come here and tell us exactly what this is all about. I certainly don't know enough about sound, so it was an education. And we have to rely on the experts when it comes to that. So, but your township, it takes this whole matter very seriously, and that's why we're talking to the experts, researching all the alternatives, and then we'll come up with the best solution. No decision has been made whatsoever. All we did was explore more research. That's all that happened today. And once we know all our alternatives, then we'll decide. And that's part of the beauty of living in a democracy. For those of you who were not born here, know what I'm talking about. We consciously chose to live in America, as opposed to those of you people who were born here who don't know what it's like to live in anything but a democracy. So in that sense, we appreciate democracy even more, having experienced other forms of government. So the freedom and the dialogue is part of what this is all about. So this is an exercise in democracy, and you may think it's futile, it's a waste of time, but it is something that we should go through in respect of democracy. So I personally, I'm in the IT business, and I believe in technology, and technology solutions are there. We should be looking into the 21st century and finding those solutions that'll sustain us through the next 100 years. So we could actually be setting new standards of noise ordinances, sound ordinances, and we could even be revisiting those ordinances, because this is not the only place. We started talking to other people, and they told us there's a problem with Naaman Williams Park, and they hear the sounds there. So if it's a problem, we need to think about speakers and what impact they have on people. And unfortunately, you have been the first ones that have gone through this, and the town has learned from it. And, if we're looking at other places where we've got to provide more facilities for people, we have learned, and maybe we'll come up with better technology solutions and better quality of life for all of us. So we will be the best place to live in America. And with that, I wish you all a happy summer. Thank you.
Councilwoman Francois.
It is unfortunate that the mayor's not here and the deputy mayor's not here and Councilman Wright's not here, because I was at a point where I was ready to call for a vote. My mind is made up. I believe that when we first started this process, I kept talking about we need to find balance, and that was the word that stayed on the top of my mind as I sat and listened to everything. There was not one comment made here by any individual that I didn't hear, that I didn't receive, that I didn't take in, that I did not appreciate. And for me, I've been really struggling over balance of quality of life, balance and peace and quiet. Anybody that knows me knows that I need my peace and quiet too. And so that was paramount on the top of my mind as far as what the needs of the residents are. I understand there are needs for recreation. I understand there are needs for some type of a sound system, but I have to agree. I believe that if we're going to be thinking win-win here, we do need to use some kind of technology solution. In my mind, Noise is sound, sound is noise, unwanted sound is noise. It's noise, noise, noise. That's all I'm hearing right now. And so my mind is made up, and I'm hopeful that we will vote on this next week. I'm hopeful the next time we meet as a council body, governing body, and that you guys won't have to come out here anymore, and you'll be satisfied with the end result that we're going to come up with. We have heard you. We have heard you loud and clear.
Thank you, Councilwoman Francois. For my comments, I'll comment on the sound system last. Canal Fest, October 18th. Bike Without Fear, I'll still call it that, I believe is September.
It's called Walk and Roll, Councilman.
Walk and roll.
Walk and roll.
So it's closing Canal Road so you can bike on it, and new parts of Canal Road have been paved, so it'll be newly paved, all of it. So your tires will be quieter as they roll.
Less noise.
Less noise. And that is the first Sunday after Labor Day, so I believe that's September 7th, but it's the first Sunday after Labor Day. And now to the sound system. I would like to thank Mr. Swirling for coming in. He took some personal body blows there in the name of science. But he was here to present science. Sometimes we want to believe things other than science. I have run my life trying to live by science, and so it was important to hear that. As far as the comment of why are we wasting the money to investigate that, I'm proud of the money we've spent, the time we've spent, the hearings we've had. We don't do these things without hearings. We don't do things without your public comments. And I know it's been painful for you, and it's been painful for us, but in one of my favorite movies, An American President, or The American President, he says, the United States is advanced credit democracy. It is hard. It is painful. And now quoting Churchill, and it's the worst form of government except for every other form there is. So, I am not ashamed to have to work through this and hear it. I was the first council member to come up with the, as we're calling it tonight, the 21st century alternative. I still believe in that, and I stand by that I will not vote for a sound system that impacts you in any way. So, right now, if we were to have a vote, I think from what people have said, you would see where that vote would go. We are a supermajority of the council, but it would be spitting in our fellow council members' eyes on such an important vote to call the vote here, and then they could just call it next time anyway. And, we have to work with these people, and we respect these people, and we would want them to respect us. So that's why we're not going to have a vote tonight. But I agree with Councilwoman Francois that we should have a vote on this next meeting, and hopefully that will be the last meeting you come to. And that concludes my comment. The manager...
The manager has several things to comment on. Yes. Thank you, Councilman. My first comment is to address what all six of you addressed in your comments. I have spoken with the township attorney, and it is my recommendation, and I will be placing on the September 9th agenda as a resolution to be voted on separately at the beginning of the meeting so that you all don't have to come and wait here very long. A resolution as to whether or not the township will allow for the installation of a public address system in Middlebush Park. So, Madam Clerk, that will be an agenda item that you and I will draft together, and that will then allow all of you to cast that vote that it seems like you are so anxious to cast.
I will be on vacation.
Oh, you will be on vacation, will you?
And I don't want to drag this on. I just need to be very sure where the vote's going before I say, don't change the date.
We can discuss that after the meeting, certainly, Councilwoman.
Thank you.
That was one. Number two, Councilman Chase did make mention of the fact that I did have a meeting since our last council meeting with the residents of Gauguin Way and Charles Street, whose properties directly border the park, as to screening and fencing along those. Invitations went out to each property owner. I believe there's about 22 or 23 in total. Not all the property owners came out. However, I think not all of the property owners have the same impact as far as the visual screening that others have. It was a very positive meeting. I think there was a lot of good discussion. There was a lot of agreement among the residents. There has been movement since that meeting on the preparation of bid specifications for fencing and landscaping, and so that project is moving forward. And the last is just off the subject, so, well, actually, no, I would actually like to address the one comment that was made. Ma'am, I don't remember your name, and I apologize for that. I went to the clerk to try to get it, and I couldn't remember where you were in the order. But you made a comment about the lighting, and not that I want to correct anything, but yes, I did make that comment. I am the township manager. I am not an elected official here. I do not make decisions on what goes into things like these parks and what things money gets spent on and what money doesn't get spent on. What I do is follow out on the policy that the Township Council dictates to me as their manager. I did not vote to put the lights in, and that's what I said at that meeting. It was not my decision to put them in, and I cannot have them removed. The only thing I can do is work with the residents to make them as least intrusive as I can. So that was my point at that meeting, and if I needed to clarify that, I wanted to do that today. The last is, we only have one meeting in August, and at this, there are two council birthdays, so I will wish a happy birthday to Councilman Kramer, whose birthday was last Thursday, and also to Councilman Chase, whose birthday I just found out today shares my birthday of next Wednesday. So, happy birthday to the two Leos that I share the stage up here with.
Happy birthday to you.
Thank you.
Are you applauding that we stayed alive?
I think so. After this meeting, I'll applaud if we're still alive. But that's all I have, Councilman.
Thank you, and I will add to my comment, I do recognize the courage of that one gentleman who came up and spoke. While I disagree with him, that is a very, very hard thing to do. Okay, we are now going to standing committee reports, and I plead that they are brief. We'll start with admin, Ms. Francois.
Okay, so this will be very, very brief. Currently, we have only one judge presiding in our courts, and that happens to be Judge Rodriguez.
Right.
Hector Rodriguez. And with the current case volume that we have, this is clearly an issue. So what the administration committee needs to do is we need to have a meeting, we need to address that. In addition to that, we are lacking some prosecutors as well, so we need to come up with a way to address the staffing issues in the court. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. For financial oversight, very briefly, we re-bonded, it's not the right term, some of our open space money, essentially got loans for a lesser amount, and between now and 2022, we will save about $323,000 by going out for rebonding on that. Public safety.
We did not have a public safety meeting since the report I believe Deputy Mayor Reagan gave a month ago. We will be having one in September and report on it in September.
Okay, thank you. Land use, open space, parks and rec.
Well, that's what Councilman Wright usually reports on. I'm trying to remember a meeting. I mean, we discussed a couple of requests either to sell township land or make exchanges of township land, which we did not approve. We had some discussion of Catalpa Park, confirmed the decision to completely deep six the Phase 3 there, and probably cut back some on Phase 1, have maybe fewer tennis courts, but basically, I think still go ahead with tennis courts and basketball courts there, but this is very tentative. And one comment I've had from someone in the area since then, which I think is a good idea, that people might feel better about it if the access road specifically leading to that part had a gate that was closed in the evening. So that's something to talk about. If we'll make sure there's a report on that meeting at the next meeting.
Okay, Public Works.
Public Works met on July 25th. The manager reported on the meeting with residents of Charles Street and Gauguin Way, as he's just reported to council. Howard Chi, the head of the Water Department, reported on the leak detection program. The water purchases for the first 6 months of 2014 were down almost 200 million gallons compared to 2013, saving us over $500,000 in purchase cost, but also representing less sales. The leak detection program is estimated to have saved water at a rate of 84 million gallons per year, or $247,500 in water that we bought but didn't sell. New Jersey American Water raised their prices of the water they sell to us 0.6% in April. New Brunswick's price for the water we buy from them goes up by contract 5% each year, which to me seems like a lot for an annual rise, but it's still far below what we pay New Jersey American Water, and we buy less from them. The committee does recommend an ordinance to make our sales price increase automatically when the price we pay for the water is increased, only by that amount. Mr. Chi met with Hatchmont McDonald, the engineering firm designing the Little Rocky Hill water main, when their design was about 85% complete. The complication is that the State Department of Transportation wants us to put the new line in a new trench outside the highway pavement rather than in the existing trench, which is under the highway. If we use the existing trench, they would require us to replace the entire concrete slab overlaying it. Either way, this is likely to cost us additional dollars. And finally, DeRussie Brook is eroding backyards along Phillips Road between Bayer Avenue and Highland Avenue. The township is liable for damage. I understand council has informed us. An engineering study by CME estimates that it'll cost $775,000 to fix this, plus the cost of the engineering design. This will be an item for next year's capital budget. So that's the Public Works report.
Thank you, Mr. Chase. So now picking up or cleaning up what we have left, we're back to council discussion item B, possible change of December 9th, 2014 Township Council meeting date because the school is having a special election that date, and our staff, namely our master clerk, will be mastering the election. So did you have some alternate dates proposed?
Thursday, December 11th.
It's fine.
It's okay with me.
It's good with me.
I don't have my calendar. I don't know yet. I don't have my calendar.
December.
What about everybody?
Yeah, I'm
December
sorry.
11th, the
No,
9th to the 11th.
Just listen to. So I don't have my calendar either. I would just say that, if that's the choice of council, that we want to change it. And just to be clear for the public, it's and actually myself, is this the referendum, or they're also
Yes.
having?
Referendum.
Referendum only, okay, so just for what's, there's a regular election will be the first Tuesday in November.
Yes.
And this referendum. So if it is an imposition on the clerk, which is that the main reason we want to change it, because of the imposition on the clerk's office, understandably,
I would have to walk out of here
Yeah,
once
okay.
everything was coming back at 9 o'clock, unless you guys think that you're going to have your meeting over by 9, which,
well, no, I don't think we'd want to commit to
yeah,
that.
correct.
No, so, okay, so in
That's
that,
our
our
only
meeting in December, right?
Correct. And
Well,
it's
that
usually
is not gonna
and
happen.
December's usually pretty big, because it's the only one.
why we need to change. I'm not against that Thursday. Is it to where you think you need more time to see, or you know that Thursday works?
We have more time. I mean, it's
Okay.
only August, so,
All
I
right,
mean,
so
if
please-
everybody can get back and,
Right.
So if
let
you
me
could
know.
put that on the discussion item for next council meeting, and we will decide then.
Mhm.
Everybody look at their agendas, and
One way or the other.
Councilwoman Sherman can let us know in
I can certainly
advance.
email everyone tomorrow. There is
Good.
email, so we can, or I'll let Anne Marie know, and she can let everybody else know.
All right,
I'm
moving.
okay with it.
Okay.
Anne Marie? I'm okay.
Okay.
Kim
I'm
is
okay. I'm okay. So you
I'm
might want to hear
okay.
from the mayor and. The mayor, the
And the
deputy mayor,
and right.
Councilman Wright.
Others.
As good as
Okay. So moving on to item 13, for those of you who are following along. Approval of the minutes. We have two minutes to approve. The Township Council Special Meeting, June 30th, 2014, and the work session regular meeting of July 8th, 2014. Do I have a motion to approve said minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We have to poll for that.
Yeah, call for the vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed, any abstentions?
Abstain on the meeting of the 30th, yes, for July 8th.
That passes. Approval of the warrants. Warrants in amount of $6,822,498.56 on today's date of August 12th, 2014, are presented to the Township Council for payment. Warrants are the bills we pay. Do I have a motion to pass the warrant?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Madam Clerk, poll the council.
Councilman Chase?
Yes.
Councilwoman Francois?
Yes.
Councilman Kramer?
Yes.
Councilman Prasad?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sherman?
Yes.
Councilman Vasanella?
He is left. So
He's
the
here.
warrants passes. We are now on to item 15, public hearing and adoption on the second reading.
get him.
So when an ordinance comes up, there are two readings. The first is essentially an announcement to the public that we will be having a final vote sometime in the future, and then the second vote or second reading is the actual vote on that. We have one ordinance up for second reading, ordinance 406614, an ordinance of the Township of Franklin, County of Somerset, State of New Jersey, authorizing the acceptance of a conservation easement from Janco LLC to the Township of Franklin for premises known as Block 8802, Lot 78 on Veronica Avenue. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and, wait a minute, Ms. Francois?
She's getting Jimmy.
Okay, but can you stay one moment for the vote, because we're not a quorum without you?
one. We need 5 for these.
Um,
No, for the bond, you need super.
So moved and seconded, do we have, Madam Clerk, Madam Master Clerk, please pull the count.
But you're only opening the public hearing, correct? You only.
Oh, right, it's a motion to open public hearing, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Public meeting is open for discussion on this one item. Sir, would you like to speak? You have to come up to the mic. State your name and address.
Yes, good evening. My name is Andy Fakidi. I live at 27 Market Street in East Millstone.
and I needed to be straightened out with regard to the agenda, and I got confused, and I apologize. There was a section for public comment for the whole agenda. Is that been closed? Did I miss it?
Yes.
How did that happen?
Yes.
There were about 50 people who spoke.
That was on one topic, wasn't it?
No, that was the general public.
Could have spoke on
What-
anything.
Which topic do you wish to speak on?
Well, the ordinance regarding the consent resolutions?
So,
Wants to talk about the special event permit.
Yes.
um,
Close.
Well, that was, I got to tell you, that went way over my head. I wasn't sure what was happening there, that the entire evening was devoted to that. I heard only the noise issue. I
So
was very
it was
confused, frankly.
stated
So I
at the
had some-
outset that
Yes.
it was for any issue, not,
any issue related to government.
Then I apologize, I must have missed it. So that means I can't say anything for the record?
That is correct. We closed the public session.
You can come
I
back
do
to the
have a-
next council meeting.
Mr. Faculty, what I can tell you is your letter is in the packets of all the council members on the dais, and I've already discussed it with several of them, and I understand your concerns regarding that special event. And if you wish to discuss that with me, by all means, I will be more than happy to discuss it with you, and I will ensure you that there are no vendors in front of your house. I'll be there that day.
Thank you, I appreciate it, and I got to tell you this, I apologize for being last and making your day a little bit longer. But I wasn't exactly sure how this was working. I was patiently waiting there, and I thought, oh, it's over. But I didn't realize it was at the end. So I'm sorry for not
So,
paying attention.
no, that,
Okay. All right.
and
Thank you.
sir,
That
I
was my
am,
only concern.
I am your ward council member.
Yes, sir.
And I live down the street from
Yes.
you. I am heavily involved with the Canal Fest.
Yes.
And we are very interested in appeasing the people on the street. So we
appreciate
will be very open to your suggestions
Good.
or to your requests. And I can arrange for a meeting with you and the members.
Sure.
So we
Yeah.
can ensure, I mean, I'm not going to not have Canal Fest.
No,
but if it's
nobody
simply
wants to
not having a
not have
vendor
it.
in front of your house,
Right.
and we can, a food vendor in front of your house, we can do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, that was my only concern, and like I said, I've been a supporter, I've been a donator, and I just wanted to make sure that it works for everybody.
We want good community relations, so.
Thank you.
So we will get together on it.
Appreciate it.
You bet.
Thank you, sir. Good night. Good evening.
Good night.
Good night.
Yep. So interesting how we didn't have public discussion then. But,
Yes, we did. I
So,
thought that.
so we are now in public discussion on the second reading.
Mr. Councilman Kramer, seeing no one coming forward to speak on this issue, I move that the public discussion be closed.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And abstain. So the ayes have it, public discussion is closed. Now, we can have a motion for the ordinance itself to pass.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded, and this is, yes, we only need 5 votes for this. So Madam Master Clerk, please poll council.
Councilman Chase?
Yes.
Councilwoman Francois? Councilman Kramer?
Yes.
Councilman Prasad?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sherman?
Yes.
Councilman Vassano?
Yes.
Very good. The measure passes. The next is also a conservation easement. We only need 5 for that. So we're now on to the first readings. There are no more public discussions. Ordinance on introduction of first reading, A, ordinance 4067-14, an ordinance of the Township of Franklin, County of Somerset, State of New Jersey, authorizing the acceptance of a conservation easement from, pardon me with these name pronunciations, Arkafuz, Karwowski, and Malgorzata Karwowski to the Township of Franklin for premises known as Block 502.01, Lot 3.01, 427 Elizabeth Avenue. The Does anyone wish to move that ordinance?
Motion to introduce.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Madam Clerk, please poll council.
Councilman Chase?
Yes.
Councilman Kramer?
Yes.
Councilman Prasad?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sherman?
Yes.
Councilman Vasanella?
Yes.
Thank you. We are now moving on to ordinance 406814, and this is for purchase. This is not a bond ordinance?
No.
No,
Okay,
this is
so we,
just authorizing the acquisition.
so we therefore only need 5 votes.
Correct.
So, ordinance 4068-14, an ordinance to acquire by purchase or condemnation certain lands within the Township of Franklin, Somerset County, for open space purposes, and to authorize the sale of certain premises in the Township of Franklin pursuant to NJSA 40A:12-13A, Block 285, Lots 3, 4, and 5, Belmar Avenue. The foregoing ordinance is presented to the Township Council for adoption on reading and posting, publication and ordinance with the law, and public hearing and final adoption on Tuesday, September 9th, 2014, at 7 o'clock at the Municipal Complex.
So moved.
Seconded. To introduce.
Moved and seconded. Madam Clerk, please poll council.
Councilman Chase?
Yes.
Councilman Kramer?
Yes.
Councilman Prasad?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sherman?
Yes.
Councilman Vasanella?
Yes.
I would like to point out in that last ordinance, it used the word condemnation. We are not using eminent domain in that. That's a term of art in there. I failed to announce on the first ordinance, the ordinance 406714, that's final adoption will be on Tuesday, September 9th, 2014, at 7 o'clock at the Municipal Building. Okay, ordinance C. I now have learned from the Township Attorney that to introduce an ordinance, a bond ordinance, you only need 5. To pass it, you need 6. So ordinance 406914, capital ordinance providing for the acquisition of property known as Block 285, Lots 3 and 4 of Belmar Avenue in and by the Township of Franklin in the County of Somerset, State of New Jersey, the Township, approximating $222,000, therefore, from the Open Space Trust Fund of the Township to pay for the cost thereof. The foregoing ordinance is presented to the Township Council for adoption on first reading, posting, publication in accordance with law, and public hearing, and final adoption on Tuesday, September 9th, 2014, at 7 p.m. at the Municipal Complex. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. I'm just counting council members as doors open and close. Madam Clerk, please poll the council.
Councilman Chase?
Yes.
Councilman Kramer?
Yes.
Councilman Prasad?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sherman?
Yes.
Councilman Vasanella?
Yes.
Moved and passed. Ordinance 407014-14, an ordinance to acquire by purchase or condemnation certain lands within the Township of Franklin, Somerset County for open space purposes and authorize the sale of certain premises in the Township of Franklin pursuant to NJS 40A:12-13A, Block 85, Lots 4 through 334 Skillman Lane? Block 4. At the address of 334 Skillman Lane. The following ordinance is presented to the Township Council for adoption on first reading, posting, publication in accordance with law, and public hearing, and final adoption on Tuesday, September 9th, 2014, at 7 p.m. at the Municipal Complex. Do I have a motion?
Motion to introduce.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Madam Clerk, please poll the council.
Councilman Chase?
Yes.
Councilwoman-
I point out that this is just acquisition of development rights. We're not even really buying the property, but it's the same format.
Councilwoman Francois?
Yes.
Councilman Kramer?
Yes.
Councilman Prasad?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sherman?
Yes.
Councilman Vasanella?
Yes.
So just to explain what we're doing here, we are using, we touched on it earlier in our proceedings. We are using that which we call open space money to acquire, in this instance, development rights so that no one can develop the land, to protect the land, to prevent houses from going in, et cetera. If I am not mistaken, we are now to E, Ordinance 4071-14. Capital ordinance providing for the acquisition of development rights of property known as Block 85, Lot 4, located at 334 Skillman Lane, in and by the Township of Franklin, in the County of Somerset, State of New Jersey, the Township appropriating, thank you, $259,350, therefore, from the Open Space Trust Fund of the Township to pay for the cost thereof. The foregoing ordinance is presented to the Township Council for adoption on first reading, posting, publication in accordance with law, and public hearing and final adoption on Tuesday, September 9th, 2014, at 7 p.m. at the Municipal Complex.
Motion to introduce.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Madam Clerk.
Councilman Chase?
Yes.
Councilwoman Francois?
Yes.
Councilman Kramer?
Yes.
Councilman Prasad?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sherman?
Yes.
Councilman Vasanella?
Yes.
Moving on to ordinance 4072-14, capital ordinance providing for the reconstruction of Castleton Park tennis courts and basketball courts for open space purposes by and in the Township of Franklin, in the County of Somerset, State of New Jersey, the Township appropriating $275,000, therefore, from the Open Space Trust Fund of the Township to pay for the cost thereof. The foregoing ordinance is presented to Township Council for adoption on first reading, posting, publication in accordance with the law, and public hearing on final adoption on Tuesday, September 9th, 2014, at 7 p.m. at the Municipal Complex. Mr. Vasanella, would you like to move?
Oh, thank you, Chairman Kramer. I very much would like to move this, and hopefully there'll be some new tennis courts and resurfaced basketball courts for the pleasure of those neighbors around Castleton Park very soon. So I would, very soon, I'm hearing the manager say. So I would like to introduce ordinance, make sure I got the right one.
4072.
Yeah,
Dash 14.
I got it, thank you, Councilman Prasad. I'd like to motion to introduce ordinance 4072-14.
Second.
No, I'd like to second that because I played tennis on those courts.
And lives just a couple blocks further than me.
And I live in the 5th Ward. And it's my backyard.
There you go. So,
And you actually want it.
Yeah.
Very.
so Councilman Vasanella has worked
Except
hard
for
with
the
this,
tennis
along
balls
with
I hit.
Councilman Prasad. It is in their neighborhood, it is in their ward. So, Madam Clerk, please poll council.
Councilman Chase?
Yes.
Councilwoman Francois?
Yes.
Councilman Kramer?
Yes.
Councilman Prasad?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sherman?
Yes.
Councilman Vasanella?
Yes.
The next ordinance is for a speaker system at that park. Now, moving on to ordinance
You're playing
407.
solo of that one.
Yeah. Ordinance 4073-14, an ordinance of the Township of Franklin in Somerset County in the State of New Jersey, amending Chapter 13, Boards, Commissions, and Committees of the Township of Franklin Municipal Code by repealing Article 5, Business and Industrial Advisory Board in its entirety, and replacing it with a new Article 5, Cultural Arts Council, amending Article 22,
No.
Raritan, no?
No, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Sorry.
Raritan and Millstone Rivers Flood Control Commission, Section 13-97, participation in commission and adding new Article 22, Franklin Youth Initiative. The foregoing ordinance is presented to the Township Council for adoption on first reading, posting, publication in accordance with law, and public hearing and final adoption on Tuesday, September 9th, 2014, at 7 p.m. at the Municipal Complex. Councilwoman Sherman, would you like to move that?
Most certainly. Well, Councilwoman Francois.
Oh, and Councilwoman
We can
Francois.
share this.
Yes, you move it
Well,
out.
that-
I move for the approval of the passage of the ordinance. Sorry, I don't have.
I second it.
Thank you. They have both worked very hard on this.
Just-
It is moved and seconded.
Just a little point I wanted to make, and that was to our manager. Your predecessor's predecessor, Ken Daly, was pretty high on this business. It used to be a breakfast meeting, and it was a great way to get the business community involved with the township. And because of low attendance and those issues, it was disbanded, and people stopped attending. And so it may be something we shouldn't kill, but keep in mind for the future.
And I attended those meetings back
Right.
when my predecessor's predecessor was manager.
Right.
And while I agree with you wholeheartedly that there was benefit to those, we're working on some things right now that, not to say to replace that, as you're aware, we don't have an economic development coordinator. We
Right.
did then, and that was the person who coordinated those efforts. We do
Right.
have a special projects manager, though, and I've spoken to some local business people, one of whom happens to be in the audience at this particular moment. And we have some things that perhaps will fill that void in the near future. So I
mean-
take those words of wisdom as just that, words of wisdom.
just Chamber of Commerce or somebody
Absolutely.
like that we could get more active with, but
We're
the
working
town
with
needs
those
to be
things.
more involved in terms of hearing
And-
the
and
business
I-
community's side of it.
You may not be aware, Councilman, but actually our special projects manager is very active with the Chamber of Commerce and very active with the Somerset County Business Partnership. I had her get involved with both of those organizations, so we're moving forward with that.
Great. That was the only point I wanted to make. I'll call the question.
Madam Clerk.
Councilman Chase?
Yeah.
Councilwoman Francois?
Yes.
Councilman Kramer?
Yes.
Councilman Prasad?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sherman?
Yes.
Councilman Vasanella?
Yes.
Moved and passed on first reading. We are now moving on to ordinance 4074-14, ordinance to amend the code of the Township of Franklin, County of Somerset, New Jersey, Chapter 93, alcoholic beverages, Section 93-14, public consumption prohibited, Section C. The foregoing ordinance is presented to the Township Council for adoption on first reading, posting, publication in ordinance with the law, and public hearing and final adoption on Tuesday, September 9th, 2014, at 7 p.m. at the Municipal Complex. I will ask the Township Attorney to just spell out the details or the overview of this.
Generally, there's a prohibition in our ordinances concerning the use of alcohol in public parks and public buildings. We've listed in this ordinance the properties that are currently being managed by the Meadows Foundation, and they frequently get requests to use those buildings for parties, for family picnics, and those types of events. And we'd like to facilitate the use of the buildings, and which were paid for by public funds and should be, available for use of the public. So the recommendation is to allow them to use alcohol in those facilities under certain circumstances, and we establish in this ordinance essentially a permit application process to do that.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Nope.
Madam Clerk.
Councilman Chase?
Yes.
Councilwoman Francois?
Yes.
Councilman Kramer?
Yes.
Councilman Prasad?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sherman?
Yes.
Councilman Vasanella?
Yes.
Ordinance 407514, an ordinance amending the code, Chapter 284, recycling of the Township of Franklin, County of Somerset, State of New Jersey, more particularly Article 2, Convenience Center. The foregoing ordinance is presented to the Township Council for adoption on first reading, posting, publication in accordance with the law, and public hearing and final adoption on Tuesday, September 9th, 2014, at 7 p.m. at the Municipal Building. This is to change some of our rules at the convenience center. We will no longer be charging for things like bringing scrap metal, since we make money on that, bringing brush under a diameter of 4 inches. What are the other items?
Recycling is always free.
It
Has been free. What? Recycling.
Well,
It's actually, it's things that we will recycle, such as electronics that we don't
Right.
currently take for free. The
But not-
recycling material, like tin cans and glass, we've always taken for free. But that's not what this is for. This is for scrap metal and things like that, that we will recycle, that we didn't take for free before we charged for.
There's also a little bit of cleaning up of the ordinance, changing permits to passes, and et cetera. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Nope.
Madam Clerk?
Councilman Chase?
Yes.
Councilwoman Francois?
Yes.
Councilman Kramer?
Yes.
Councilman Prasad?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sherman?
Yes.
Councilman Vasanella?
Yes.
And it passes. Ordinance 4076-14. An ordinance to amend the municipal code of the Township of Franklin, County of Somerset, State of New Jersey by amending Chapter 330 entitled Stormwater Management, Article 12, Inspection and Subsequent Fines for Non-Compliance of Ordinances, Section 330-30, Inspection and Subsequent Fines for Non-Compliance of Ordinance, Section B. The foregoing ordinance is presented to the Township Council for adoption on first reading, posting, publication in accordance with law, and public hearing and final adoption on Tuesday, September 9th, 2014, at 7 o'clock at the Municipal Building. Mr. Chase, would you like to move that?
Yes. This is there are a few detention basins which are on individual homeowners' lots, and that the individual homeowner has the responsibility of taking care of for the other houses in a small subdivision, and this is just to relieve them of paying the fees that would be paid by a whole homeowners association for detention basins in a homeowners association land. So I move this ordinance.
Second.
Seconded.
Moved and second. Any further discussion? Madam Master Clerk?
Councilman Chase?
Yes.
Councilwoman Francois?
Yes.
Councilman Kramer?
Yes.
Councilman Prasad?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sherman?
Yes.
Councilman Vasanella?
Yes.
Ordinance 4077-14, an ordinance of the Township of Franklin in Somerset County, repealing Code Chapter 384, Water, Article 9, Water Emergencies, in its entirety, and placing it with a new Article 9, Water Conservation. The foregoing ordinance presented to the Township Council for adoption on first reading, posting, publication in accordance with the law, and public hearing and final adoption on Tuesday, September 9th. It's going to be a busy day, 2014, at 7 p.m. at the Municipal Complex. Again, the honor I will offer to Councilman Chase.
I would very much like to move this ordinance.
Oh, we're going to have to
Second
think
it.
about it. Oh.
Moved and seconded. Councilman, to say, the other people have worked hard on other ordinances. Councilman Chase's blood is in the water on this ordinance.
That's for sure.
Moved and seconded. Madam Master Clerk, if you would.
Councilman Chase.
Yes.
Councilwoman Francois.
Yes.
Councilman Kramer.
Yes.
Councilman Prasad.
Yes.
Councilwoman Sherman.
Yes.
Councilman Vasanella.
Yes.
Very good. Ordinance 4078-14. Yes. Bond ordinance amending bond ordinance number 3811, final adoption on January 27, 2009, providing for the 2009 road overlay program as amended by bond ordinance number 3877-10, finally adopted on April 27, 2010 by the Township of Franklin and the County of Somerset, State of New Jersey, to increase the useful life thereof. The foregoing ordinance presented to the Township Council for adoption on first reading, posting, publication in accordance with the law and public hearing, and final adoption on Tuesday, September 9th, 2014, at 7 p.m. at the Municipal Complex. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Madam Master Clerk.
Councilman Chase.
Yes.
Councilwoman Francois.
Yes.
Councilman Kramer.
Yes.
Councilman Prasad.
Yes.
Councilwoman Sherman.
Yes.
Councilman Vasanella.
Yes.
It passes.
Good.
It's introduced.
It's introduced. You're right.
The next three are,
Introduction, 407914, bond ordinance amending bond ordinance number 3876-10, finally adopted on April 13th, 2010, providing for the 2010 road overlay program by the Township of Franklin and the town in the County of Somerset, State of New Jersey, to increase the useful life thereof. The foregoing ordinance is presented to the Township Council for adoption on first reading, posting, publication in accordance with law, and public hearing and final adoption on Tuesday, September 9th, 2014, at 7 p.m. at the Municipal Complex. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Master Clerk.
Councilman Chase.
Yes.
Councilwoman Francois.
Yes.
Councilman Kramer.
Yes.
Councilman Prasad.
Yes.
Councilwoman Sherman.
Yes.
Councilman Vasanella.
Yes.
Ordinance 4080-14, bond ordinance amending bond ordinance number 3963-12, final adoption on February 28th, 2012, providing for the 2012 road overlay program by the Township of Franklin in the County of Somerset, State of New Jersey, to increase the useful life thereof. Final reading will be on Tuesday, September 9th at 7 p.m. in the Municipal Complex. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Madam Master Clerk.
Councilman Chase.
Yes.
Councilwoman Francois.
Yes.
Councilman Kramer.
Yes.
Councilman Prasad.
Yes.
Councilwoman Sherman.
Yes.
Councilman Vasanella.
Yes.
So introduced. Ordinance 4081-14, bond ordinance amending bond ordinance number 3982-12, finally adopted on August 14th, 2012, providing for the 2012 road overlay program by the Township of Franklin in the County of Somerset, State of New Jersey, to increase the useful life thereof. Final reading will be on Tuesday, September 9th, 2014, at 7 p.m. in the Municipal Complex. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
So, seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk.
Councilman Chase.
Yes.
Councilwoman Francois.
Yes.
Councilman Kramer.
Yes.
Councilman Prasad.
Yes.
Councilwoman Sherman.
Yes.
Councilman Vasanella.
Yes.
And our last first reading of the night, ordinance 4082-14, bond ordinance amending bond ordinance number 4026-13, finally adopted on July 16th, 2013, providing for the 2013 road overlay program by the Township of Franklin and the County of Somerset, State of New Jersey, to increase the useful life thereof. Final passage on Tuesday, September 9th, 2014, at 7 p.m. at the Municipal Complex. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk.
Councilman Chase.
Yes.
Councilwoman Francois.
Yes.
Councilman Kramer.
Yes.
Councilman Prasad?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sherman?
Yes.
Councilman Vasanella?
Yes.
So we're now at item 17 on the agenda, the consent agenda resolution. These are a number of resolutions, in fact, A through BG, that we will move in a single vote. I'll give council members a moment to peruse them in case they wish to pull or point out anyone. And I do not know off the top of my head which one it is, but Canal Fest, the permit for Canal Fest is in here, and I will use that time to shamefully once again announce the Canal Fest celebration. This will be the fourth one on October 18th, and I will personally attempt to have no food vendors in front of the gentleman's house.
Motion to pass the consent agenda?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Madam Clerk?
Councilman Chase?
I've just been checking the hunting resolution, which I had a lot of correspondence with Fran Varacalli on. The one thing that remains is that in season 3B, and this is item AW, it still says fire bow and/or bow season. It should be firearms. But yes, on the agenda.
Councilwoman Francois?
Yes.
Councilman Kramer?
Yes.
Councilman Prasad?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sherman?
Yes.
Councilman Vasanella?
Yes.
We are now to item 18, resolution voted on separately. Resolution 14-404. Introduce, TY 204?
It's your transition year.
Transition year. 204.
2014.
Should be 2014, maybe I left the one out?
Yes, you did.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Transition year 2014, Hamilton Street Special Improvement District, and set public hearing date is presented to the Township Council for adoption. This is,
It's their budget.
yeah, their budget.
Yeah.
Correct. It's the introduction of the budget for a
Right.
6-month to get us on a fiscal, calendar year and off the fiscal year.
Okay. Very good.
Motion to introduce, pass.
Second.
Introduce, you were right.
So we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? No discussion? Madam Clerk?
Councilman Chase?
Yes.
Councilwoman Francois?
Yes.
Councilman Kramer?
Yes.
Councilman Prasad?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sherman?
Yes.
Councilman Vasanella?
Yes.
Item 19, old business, 2014 boards and commission vacancies. Would anyone like to nominate anyone for a board or commission?
No.
I will again plug that the Advisory Board of Health does need members. Please apply. Item 20, executive session. Executive sessions are times that we go into a private meeting of council, and the reasons for it can be on litigation and sale of property, contract negotiation, attorney-client privilege, and other such things. We are going into this for a specific reason of Resolution 14-405, authorize executive session litigation for 90 Old Georgetown Road, also for sale of township land, Route 27, Little Rocky Hill to Fire District Number 2, and for contract negotiations, PBA SOA is presented to Township Council for adoption. We are moving, this is a motion to move into executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Madam Clerk?
Councilman Chase?
Yes.
Councilwoman Francois?
Yes.
Councilman Kramer?
Yes.
Councilman Prasad?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sherman?
Yes.
Councilman Vasanella?
Yes.
We will now move into executive session. No other business will be conducted after executive session, so that our videographer can go home. We will stop the taping at this time. We will come out of executive session and merely adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good night.